I stared at the letter in my hands, my fingers trembling as I read the words again. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. Mom! Peter's voice called from the kitchen. Have you seen my? He stopped short when he saw me standing in the living room, clutching the paper to my chest. What's wrong? I looked up at my son, searching his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised. The kind, thoughtful child who'd always put others first. But all I saw was a stranger, a man I barely recognized anymore. Peter, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What is this? He frowned, taking a step closer. What's what? I thrust the letter at him, watching as his eyes widened in recognition. Oh, he said, his voice flat. That? I repeated, incredulous. Is that all you have to say? Your wife sent me a letter telling me you're taking over the house. My house. The house your father and I built together. Peter ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. Mom, it's not like that. We just thought. You thought what? I interrupted, anger rising in my chest. That you could just kick me out of my own home? That I'd go quietly. He held up his hands, placating. No one's kicking you out. We just think it's time for a change. Rachel and we need more space. And you're getting older, Mom. Maybe it's time to downsize. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Downsize? Peter, I'm only 65. I'm not ready for a retirement home. That's not what I meant, he said, but his words rang hollow. The front door opened and Rachel breezed in, her designer purse swinging from her arm. Oh, hello, Emily, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I see you got my letter. I turned to face my daughter-in-law, the architect of this betrayal. Rachel, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Would you care to explain why you think you have the right to take my home? Rachel's smile faltered for a moment before returning, brittle and forced. Now, Emily, there's no need to be dramatic. Peter and I simply feel it's time for a change. This house is much too big for just one person, and we could really use the extra space. And what about what I need? I asked, my voice rising. This is my home. George and I built it together. Every room holds memories of our life, of raising Peter. You can't just take that away from me. Peter stepped between us, his face a mask of discomfort. Mom, please. We're not trying to hurt you. We just think this is best for everyone. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and felt my heart break. When had he become this person? When had my sweet boy turned into a man who would choose his wife's desires over his mother's needs? Best for everyone? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Or best for you and Rachel? Rachel huffed, her patience clearly wearing thin. Emily, be reasonable. You can't expect to live here forever. It's time to move on. I felt something snap inside me. Years of biting my tongue, of watching my son change under Rachel's influence, of feeling like a stranger in my own family. It all came rushing to the surface. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Peter blinked, taken aback. What? I said, get out. I repeated, louder this time. Both of you. This is my house, and I want you to leave. Now. Rachel's mouth fell open in shock. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, I said, straightening my spine. And let me make one thing perfectly clear. This house is mine. It will always be mine. And if either of you tries to take it from me, I promise you'll regret it. As I watched them leave, Peter casting one last confused glance over his shoulder, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and determination settle over me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After Peter and Rachel left, I sank into George's old armchair, my mind reeling. How had it come to this? I closed my eyes, memories flooding back of a time when Peter was still my sweet, thoughtful boy. I remembered his high school graduation, the pride shining in his eyes as he hugged me tight. I did it, Mom, he'd said. And it's all thanks to you and Dad. George had clapped him on the back, beaming. You did the work, son. We just cheered you on. Those days seemed so far away now. I opened my eyes, glancing at the family photo on the mantel. Peter's smile was so genuine then, his arm around my shoulders. When had that changed? The phone rang, startling me from my reverie. I answered, hearing Peter's hesitant voice. "Mom, can we talk?" I sighed. "I'm not sure there's anything left to say, Peter." "Please, Mom. I want to explain." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at the local diner. As I drove there, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a mistake. Peter was already seated when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin. He stood as I approached, uncertainty in his eyes. "Mom, I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Before you say anything, I want you to answer one question. And I want the truth, Peter. When did you start seeing me as a burden instead of your mother?" He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Mom, that's not. Isn't it?" I interrupted, my voice low but firm. "Because that's exactly how it feels. Like you and Rachel can't wait to get rid of me so you can have the house to yourselves." Peter's shoulders slumped. "It's not like that. Rachel just thinks. She says we need to start planning for our future. For a family." I felt a pang in my chest. "And there's no room for me in that future?" "Of course there is," he insisted, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "We just thought maybe it would be easier if you had a smaller place. Somewhere without stairs, you know." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "Peter, I'm perfectly capable of managing my own home. The home your father and I built together. How can you not understand how important that is to me?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of George that it made my heart ache. "I do understand, Mom. It's just, Rachel says, Rachel thinks." I cut in, my patience wearing thin. "What about what you think, Peter? What about what I need?" Before he could answer, the bell above the diner door chimed. I looked up to see Rachel striding towards us, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "There you are," she said, sliding into the booth next to Peter. "I was worried when you didn't come home." I bit back a retort, watching as Peter seemed to shrink in on himself. This wasn't my son. This was a shadow of the man I'd raised, eclipsed by Rachel's domineering presence. "We were just discussing the house situation," I said, keeping my voice level. Rachel's smile was brittle. "Oh, good. I hope you're seeing reason, Emily. It really is for the best, you know." I felt something snap inside me. "The best for whom, Rachel?" "For you. Because it certainly isn't what's best for me, or for this family." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Now, Emily, there's no need to be difficult. We're only thinking of your well-being." I stood, my hands flat on the table. "My well-being is just fine, thank you. And I'll tell you both one last time, that house is my home. I'm not leaving, and if you try to force me out, you'll regret it." As I walked away, I heard Rachel's voice, low and angry. "Peter, you need to do something about your mother. She can't keep standing in the way of our future." I paused at the door, turning back to see Peter's conflicted face. In that moment, I knew the battle for my home, and for my son, was far from over. And I was ready to fight. I sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, my heart pounding in my chest. George had been in with the doctor for what felt like hours. When he finally emerged, his face was ashen, and I knew. I just knew. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." We found a quiet corner, away from the bustle of nurses and patients. George took my hands in his grip tight. "It's cancer," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "Stage 4. They're giving me 6 months, maybe less." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "No," I breathed. "There must be some mistake. We can get a second opinion, we can." George shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "I've known something was wrong for a while, Em. This just confirms it." I felt tears welling up, but I blinked them back. "What do we do now?" He squeezed my hands. "We live, Emily. We make the most of the time we have left." As we drove home, my mind raced. How could I tell Peter? Would this news bring him back to us, make him remember what really mattered? Or would Rachel see it as an opportunity? We pulled into the driveway, and I was surprised to see Peter's car already there. As we entered the house, I heard voices from the kitchen, Peter and Rachel arguing in hushed tones. "We can't wait that long," Rachel was saying. "Who knows how long it'll take for the old man to kick the bucket?" I felt George stiffen beside me. "Rachel, for God's sake," Peter hissed. "That's my father you're talking about." I know," she said, not sounding the least bit apologetic. "But we need to think about our future, Peter. This house, your parents' savings, it could set us up for life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Before George could stop me, I stormed into the kitchen. "How dare you?" I spat. Peter and Rachel jumped apart, guilt written all over their faces. "Mom, Dad," Peter stammered. "We didn't hear you come in." "Clearly," I said, my voice ice cold. "Otherwise you might have been more careful about discussing your plans for our death and your inheritance." Rachel had the grace to look embarrassed, but there was a calculating gleam in her eye that made my skin crawl. "Emily," she started, her voice sickly sweet, "you misunderstood. We were just—" "Save it," George interrupted, his normally gentle voice hard with anger. "I think we heard enough." Peter looked between us, his face pale. "Dad, what's going on? Why were you at the hospital?" I saw the moment George made his decision. "I have cancer, son. Terminal. 6 months, give or take." The color drained from Peter's face. "What? No, that can't be right." But Rachel's eyes had lit up with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Excitement? Anticipation? The sight made me feel ill. "Oh, George," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "That's terrible news. Is there anything we can do?" "You can get out of our house," I snapped, unable to contain my anger any longer. "Both of you." Peter looked stricken. "Mom, please. We didn't mean—" "Didn't mean what?" George asked, his voice tired. "Didn't mean for us to hear you planning our demise? Didn't mean to treat your mother like an inconvenience to be shuffled off to a nursing home." Rachel put a hand on Peter's arm. "We should go," she murmured. "Give them time to process." As they left, I turned to George, feeling more alone than ever. "What are we going to do?" He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "We're going to fight, Emily. Not just my cancer, but for our family. For our home." I nodded, determination replacing my despair. "You're right. And I have an idea." George raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's time we made some changes to your will," I said, a plan already forming in my mind. "If Peter and Rachel want this house so badly, let's see how far they're willing to go to get it." As we sat down to discuss the details, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long and painful battle. But with George by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The weeks following George's diagnosis were a blur of doctor's appointments and hushed conversations. I tried to focus on making George comfortable, but the weight of our family's fracture hung heavy on my heart. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard Peter's car pull into the driveway. My heart leapt with hope. Maybe he'd come to his senses, to be there for his father in these difficult times. I was about to call out when I heard Rachel's voice, sharp and insistent. "We need to talk to them about the will, Peter. Time's running out." I froze, my hand on the kitchen door. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but I couldn't help myself. "Not now, Rachel," Peter said, his voice tired. "Dad's sick. We can't just—" "That's exactly why we need to do this now," Rachel interrupted. "Before it's too late. Do you want to end up with nothing?" I heard Peter sigh. "It's not about the money. It's about family." Rachel's laugh was cold. "Family? Wake up, Peter. Your parents are holding us back. Once your father's gone, we can finally start our life together. No more worrying about your mother's feelings or this outdated house." My blood ran cold. I'd known Rachel was selfish, but this level of callousness shocked me to my core. "Rachel, please," Peter pleaded. "Can we not talk about this now?" "Fine," she snapped. "But don't come crying to me when your parents leave everything to charity and we're left with nothing." I heard their footsteps retreating, and I sagged against the counter, my mind reeling. How could Peter stand by and let Rachel talk about us, about his dying father, like that? I was still standing there, lost in thought, when George came into the kitchen. "Emily? Are you all right?" I turned to him, tears in my eyes. "Oh, George. I just overheard Peter and Rachel talking. It's worse than we thought." I recounted the conversation, watching George's face grow more troubled with each word. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "We need to protect ourselves, Emily," he said finally. "And maybe teach them a lesson in the process." I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. "The will. We can use it to ensure they can't just toss me aside once you're gone." George's eyes lit up with understanding. "A condition. We'll leave the house to Peter, but only if I'm allowed to live here," I finished. "For as long as I want." We spent the next hour outlining our plan, the excitement of outwitting Rachel momentarily overshadowing our grief. As we finished, I heard Peter and Rachel moving around upstairs. "Should we tell them?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. George shook his head. "No. Let them think they've won. It'll make the lesson all the more powerful when the time comes." Just then, Peter appeared in the doorway. "Mom, Dad, can we talk to you for a minute?" I exchanged a glance with George, steeling myself. "Of course, honey. What is it?" Peter shifted uncomfortably. "It's about the future. After, well, you know." Rachel appeared behind him, her face a mask of false concern. "We just want to make sure everything's taken care of. For all of us." I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down, forcing a smile. "Of course. Why don't we all sit down and discuss it?" As we moved to the living room, I caught George's eye. He gave me a subtle nod, and I knew we were on the same page. We would play along, let them think they were getting what they wanted. But in the end, we would have the last laugh. Sitting across from Peter and Rachel, watching them try to delicately broach the subject of George's will, I made a silent vow. I would protect our home, our legacy, and the memory of the family we once were, no matter the cost. The next morning, I woke to find George already up, poring over legal documents at the kitchen table. His face was drawn, the toll of his illness evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "George," I said softly, "you should be resting." He looked up, a determined glint in his eye. "No time for that, Em. We need to get this sorted before." He trailed off, but I understood. Before it was too late. I sat beside him, scanning the papers. "Is this the will?" He nodded. "I've been thinking about what we discussed. The conditional clause. It's risky, but I think it's our best shot at protecting you and teaching Peter a lesson." As we pored over the legal jargon, crafting the perfect wording for our plan, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and resolve. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending our final months together, but circumstances had forced our hand. Just as we were finalizing the details, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, a forced smile on her face. "Emily," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Before I could respond, she brushed past me into the house. I gritted my teeth, following her to the kitchen where George quickly shuffled the papers out of sight. "George," Rachel said, her eyes darting around the room. "How are you feeling today?" "As well as can be expected," George replied, his voice neutral. Rachel nodded, feigning sympathy. "Peter and I have been so worried. We were thinking maybe it's time to consider some arrangements." I felt my blood begin to boil. "Arrangements?" She turned to me, her smile never wavering. "You know, for the future. We want to make sure everything's taken care of. For all of us." George and I exchanged a glance. This was it, the moment to put our plan into action. "Actually, Rachel," George said, his voice steady, "we've already made some arrangements. Would you like to discuss them?" Rachel's eyes lit up, barely concealing her eagerness. "Oh, of course. If you're feeling up to it." We sat at the kitchen table, the air thick with tension. George pulled out a copy of the will we'd just drafted, careful to keep the conditional clause hidden. "We've decided to leave the house to Peter," George began. Rachel's smile widened, but before she could speak, I cut in. But there are conditions. Her smile faltered. Conditions? George nodded. Yes. You see, this house isn't just a piece of property. It's our home. It's where we raised Peter, where we built our life together. We want to make sure it's respected and cared for. Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course. Peter and I would take excellent care of it. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze. And what about me, Rachel? Where do I fit into your plans for this house? She hesitated, caught off guard. Well, I'm sure we could come to some arrangement. A nice retirement community, perhaps. The casual way she suggested displacing me from my own home made my resolve strengthen. That won't be necessary, I said firmly, because one of the conditions of the will is that I'll be staying right here. Rachel's composure slipped for a moment, shock and anger flashing across her face before she schooled her features. I see. Well, I'm sure we can work something out that's mutually beneficial. As she left, promising to discuss it further with Peter, I turned to George. Do you think she suspects? He shook his head. No, I don't think so. But we need to be careful. They'll be watching us closely now. I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. We'd taken the first step in our plan, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. That night, as I lay awake listening to George's labored breathing beside me, I made a silent vow. No matter what happened, I would fight for our home, for George's memory, and for the son I knew was still somewhere inside Peter. The war had begun, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to win. The call came at 3:17 a.m. I fumbled for my phone, my heart already knowing what I'd hear. Mrs. Thompson? It's about your husband. The next few hours passed in a blur. The quiet hospital corridors, the sympathetic looks from nurses, the cold reality of signing papers I couldn't bring myself to read. George was gone. I sat in my living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together, feeling more alone than I ever had. The sun was just peeking over the horizon when I heard a car pull up. Peter burst through the door, his face pale and drawn. Mom! He choked out, pulling me into a tight embrace. For a moment I saw my little boy again, seeking comfort in his mother's arms. But then Rachel appeared behind him, and the illusion shattered. Her eyes were dry, her expression carefully composed. Emily, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. We came as soon as we heard. Is there anything we can do? I pulled away from Peter, straightening my spine. No, thank you. I've made all the necessary arrangements. Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you sure? It's a lot to handle on your own. Perhaps it would be best if we stayed here for a while, to help out. I saw the glint in her eye, the barely concealed eagerness to get her foot in the door. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. This is my home, and I'm quite capable of managing on my own. The days that followed were a whirlwind of funeral preparations and well-wishers. Through it all, Rachel hovered, always ready with a suggestion about how things should be done or what George would have wanted. The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. As I stood by George's casket, receiving condolences from friends and family, I overheard Rachel speaking to Peter in hushed tones. We need to talk to her about the house, she was saying. Strike while the iron's hot, before she has time to dig her heels in. I felt a surge of anger, but before I could confront them, the service began. As I listened to the pastor speak about George's life and legacy, I steeled myself for the battle I knew was coming. That evening, as the last of the mourners left, Rachel cornered me in the kitchen. Emily, she began, her voice sickly sweet. Peter and I have been talking, and we think it might be best if you considered other living arrangements. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. Excuse me. She pressed on, undeterred. It's just that this house is so big, and with George gone, well, we thought you might prefer something smaller, easier to manage. And where would you suggest I go? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Rachel's smile widened. Oh, we've found the loveliest retirement community. Very active, lots of people your age. I'm sure you'd be much happier there." I felt a rage building inside me, threatening to explode. But before I could respond, Peter appeared in the doorway. "Mom," he said, his voice hesitant, "we really think this would be for the best. The house, well, it's rightfully ours now, isn't it?" In that moment, looking at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man George and I had poured our love and hopes into, I felt something inside me break. "Get out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel blinked, taken aback. "What?" I said. "Get out," I shouted, my composure finally shattering. "Both of you! How dare you come into my home, on the day of my husband's funeral, and try to force me out? This is my house, my life, and I will not be bullied by the likes of you." Peter looked stricken, but Rachel's face hardened. "You can't keep us out, Emily. The will says nothing of the sort," I interrupted, a grim smile spreading across my face. "And you're about to find out just how wrong you are." As they left, confusion and anger warring on their faces, I sank into George's old armchair. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since George's death, I felt a flicker of hope. Our plan was in motion, and soon, very soon, Peter and Rachel would learn the true cost of their greed. The day of the will reading arrived, heavy with anticipation. I sat in our lawyer's office, my heart pounding as Peter and Rachel took their seats across from me. Rachel's eyes gleamed with barely concealed triumph, while Peter looked uncomfortable, unable to meet my gaze. Mr. Jameson, our family lawyer, cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" As he read through the standard legal jargon, I watched Rachel's smile grow wider. She reached for Peter's hand, squeezing it tightly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Now, regarding the family home," Mr. Jameson continued, "Mr. Thompson has left it to his son Peter." Rachel's smile turned into a full-fledged grin. She turned to me, a look of false sympathy on her face. "Oh, Emily, I'm sure we can work something out. Perhaps a nice retirement community." "I'm not finished," Mr. Jameson interrupted, his voice sharp. Rachel's smile faltered as he continued reading. "The house is left to Peter on the condition that his mother, Emily Thompson, is allowed to reside there for as long as she wishes, rent-free and without interference." The room fell silent. I watched as the color drained from Rachel's face, her triumphant expression crumbling. "What?" she sputtered. That's not possible. There must be some mistake." Mr. Jameson shook his head. "No mistake, Mrs. Thompson. The will is quite clear." Peter looked stunned. But we thought." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You thought what, Peter? That you could just toss me aside? That the home your father and I built meant nothing?" Rachel's shock quickly turned to anger. "This is ridiculous. We'll contest it. You can't do this to us." Mr. Jameson cleared his throat again. "I'm afraid there's more. Should the conditions of the will be violated, that is, should any attempt be made to force Mrs. Emily Thompson from her home, the property will be immediately transferred to a charitable trust. Neither Peter nor his wife will have any claim to it." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's face contorted with rage, while Peter looked like he might be sick. "You planned this," Rachel hissed, her eyes boring into me. "You and George, you set us up." I met her gaze, unflinching. "We protected our home and our legacy. Something you seem to have forgotten the value of." Peter finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied, my heart breaking all over again at the stranger my son had become. "Your actions have said it all." As we left the office, Rachel stormed ahead, already on her phone, no doubt calling every lawyer she knew. Peter lingered behind, his shoulders slumped. "Mom," he started, but I held up a hand to stop him. "Not now, Peter. I think we both need some time to process this." I watched him walk away, feeling a mix of triumph and sorrow. We had won, George and I. Our home was safe. But at what cost? Back at the house, my house, I sank into George's favorite armchair, emotionally drained. I picked up a framed photo of our family from happier times, tracing Peter's smiling face with my finger. "Oh, George," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "Did we do the right thing?" As if in answer, a warm breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of the roses George had planted years ago. I closed my eyes, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. Rachel wouldn't give up easily, and Peter, well, I hadn't given up hope for my son just yet. Whatever came next, I was ready. This was my home, my life, and I would fight for it with every breath I had. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. It was time to start living again, on my own terms. George would have wanted that. And who knew? Maybe, just maybe, this would be the wake-up call Peter needed to find his way back to the son we'd raised. With a deep breath, I opened the curtains wide, letting the sunlight flood in. A new chapter was beginning, and I was ready to face it head-on. Weeks passed, and the house fell into an uneasy quiet. I hadn't heard from Peter or Rachel since the will reading, and part of me was relieved. But as I sat in the garden one sunny afternoon, I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. My heart leapt to my throat as I saw Peter's car pull up. He stepped out, looking haggard and worn. Rachel emerged from the passenger side, her designer clothes wrinkled, her hair unkempt. I steeled myself as they approached. "Peter, Rachel," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "This is unexpected." Peter's eyes were red-rimmed, his voice hoarse. "Mom, we need to talk." I led them inside, an odd sense of déjà vu washing over me as we sat in the living room. The last time we'd been here like this, George was still alive, and our family was whole. Rachel spoke first, her usual bravado gone. "Emily, we've made a terrible mistake." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. Peter took a deep breath. "We're in trouble, Mom. Serious trouble. We took out loans against the house. We thought we'd inherit it, and we'd be able to pay them back. But now you can't." I finished for him. Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. "They're going to take everything. Our car, our savings. We'll be on the street." I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, pity, a twisted sense of satisfaction. "And what do you expect me to do about it?" Peter leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. "We were hoping. Maybe you could help us? Loan us the money? Or let us move in here. Just until we get back on our feet." I stared at them, hardly believing what I was hearing. After everything they'd done, they had the audacity to ask for my help? "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You tried to force me out of my home. You disrespected your father's memory. And now you want me to bail you out." Rachel's tears flowed freely now. "Please, Emily. We have nowhere else to go." For a moment, I was tempted. The mother in me wanted to protect Peter, to shelter him from the consequences of his actions. But then I remembered George's words. Sometimes, love means letting them face the music. I took a deep breath. "No." Peter's face crumpled. "Mom, please." "No," I repeated more firmly this time. "You made your choices, Peter. You and Rachel. Now you have to live with them." Rachel's sorrow turned to anger. "How can you be so heartless? He's your son." I stood, my resolve strengthening. "Yes, he is. And it's time he learned to stand on his own 2 feet, without manipulating or taking advantage of others." Peter's shoulders slumped in defeat. What are we supposed to do?" I walked to the door, holding it open. "That's for you to figure out. But you won't do it here." As I watched them drive away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't the ending I'd hoped for, but it was the one we'd all earned. In the months that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Peter and Rachel had moved into a small apartment across town. Peter had taken a job at the local factory, while Rachel was waitressing. It wasn't the life they'd envisioned, but it was honest work. One crisp fall morning, as I tended to George's roses, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Peter, looking older but somehow more like the son I remembered. "Mom," he said softly, I owe you an apology. A big one." I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. "Yes, you do. He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry. For everything. I lost sight of what really mattered and I hurt you. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw genuine remorse in his eyes. The wall I'd built around my heart began to crumble. Oh, Peter, I said, pulling him into a hug. I already have. As we stood there, surrounded by George's roses, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our family would never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. Something stronger. I looked up at the clear blue sky, feeling George's presence all around us. Thank you, I whispered, knowing he'd hear me. For everything. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. After all, I was Emily Thompson. And I was home.
Our bank strategy doesn't seem to work for you. A single-parent household's high school graduate gets sacked. Alex Miller, the newly appointed president who had recently taken over the bank, was standing in front of me. Alex declared my dismissal and threw me out of the bank with a smug smile. Alex obviously meant to cast me out like trash, even though I had a history of making no serious mistakes and even improving performance for the bank. That was the start of my conflict with Alex. David Nelson is my name. I'm a 36-year-old banker who works for a big Chicago bank. I was raised in a single-parent home after losing my father when I was a small child. I began working as soon as I graduated from high school, but now that I've gained the respect of my coworkers and managers, I'm given big projects to work on. I have had a fantastic life. I've been able to give back to my mother because of my hard work. I even take her on long holidays to a resort vacation in the United States. I had assumed that I would lead a tranquil existence, but destiny had other ideas. The general downturn in the industry may be one of the causes of this change. The same strategies that had previously been successful were failing to bring in new business, and among us bankers, rumors of a potential merger began to circulate. The previous president had been actively working hard to create new business chances, but he collapsed in the midst of it all. Thankfully, his life was spared and he was promptly located. Even though it was verified that he would require a lengthy hospital stay, I was relieved to hear the news. It was decided that a change in leadership was necessary because, even after his recovery, he would not be able to return to the front lines as previously. Alex Miller, the eldest son of the previous president, was appointed as the new president. Alex, who was in his early 40s, had been employed in the global hotel sector before. I believed he was passionate about his career because I had heard he had switched to a different industry to obtain more expertise. However, that presumption proved to be incorrect in the most detrimental way. Alex gave a ridiculous order as soon as he was elected president. He crossed his arms haughtily and glared critically at the staff as he walked into our office for the first time. With a firm, authoritative voice, he addressed the senior staff and declared, "Now that I'm in charge, we're changing the old ways to make this a place where young talent thrives. Employees under 30 are being promoted to important roles." Alex effectively pushed longtime seniors who had held important positions for more than a decade to the sidelines by demoting them. He began replacing them by elevating a succession of young, highly educated bankers to high-level positions. From now on, this bank will operate based on merit. Under the direction of the most driven young professionals, we are constructing an open institution. At first glance, Alex's argument seemed reasonable. However, my fellow bankers and I voiced our opposition. Sure, evaluating someone based on their abilities is important, but making such a drastic change all at once is too reckless. Alex had just been appointed the president and knew nothing about the inner workings of the bank or the strengths and personalities of the staff. Even if you wanted to improve the bank, this approach would never work. With that in mind, I gathered the opinions of my colleagues and decided to speak up to Alex. The senior bankers feel disrespected after having their accomplishments and skills overlooked and being pushed to the sidelines. Meanwhile, the younger staff, suddenly thrown into key positions, are overwhelmed by the gap between their responsibilities and their actual experience. David, wasn't it? You're in a managerial position as well, despite being relatively young. If you don't like my directives that much, I'll take the burden off your shoulders. Alex refused to listen to any of our concerns. In fact, he demoted me and stripped me of my title, reducing me to a regular employee. My replacement? a bright young banker who had only been with the bank for 3 years. Although talented, he was the most unsettled by this sudden promotion. No matter how smart or highly educated someone is, there's no substitute for experience. In the past, the workplace ensured senior colleagues could support newly promoted managers. But with Alex's reshuffle, there were no experienced employees left to provide guidance. The chaos didn't stop with me. Similar reshuffling happened across departments, plunging the entire workplace into disorder. Eventually, daily operations were disrupted, and even our clients began to suffer the consequences. Seeing the impact on our business partners, I decided to confront Alex again. Alex, we can't continue our operations as usual under these conditions. Our current situation is damaging the bank's reputation with our clients. What are you even talking about? Banks of the future shouldn't be a haven for aging employees. They should be a stage for young talent to shine. We don't need the reputation we've built up if it means holding on to the past. His response was a cold, derisive laugh. I spoke up for the sake of the bank and my colleagues, but Alex snorted in disdain at my words. You're just upset that younger employees have surpassed you in rank, aren't you? Employees like you are dead weight to the company. No matter how much I pleaded, Alex wouldn't budge from his stance. No matter how sincerely I explained, my words never got through to him. Even when I asked him to create a system where senior bankers could support the younger staff, he flatly dismissed it, saying it wasn't necessary. Finally, with a look of contempt, Alex pulled out my personnel file. All right, David. You just want your old position back. I mean, come on. A high school graduate working at a bank and even managing a team? That must have been a fluke. Could you at least look at my performance record? I've been at the top in sales, I tried to explain. But Alex waved his hand impatiently to silence me. Yeah, I get it. But as someone who graduated from an Ivy League school, I really don't get what a high school diploma holder like you has to say anyway. Just take your vacation as scheduled, David. I was worried about the bank and my colleagues. But this was the time of year when I took my mom on our annual trip to a resort holiday. Since I had already submitted my paid leave request, I reluctantly decided to take my vacation. I never imagined things would turn out like this, but at least I resolved to enjoy the trip and clear my head. I had a wonderful time showing my mom around and relaxing at the resort hotel. But when I returned home, I was greeted by an unexpected surprise. There was an envelope from my workplace. I wasn't expecting anything. Curious, I opened the envelope. Inside was a resignation letter. It was already filled out with my name and details. Only my signature was missing. Of course, I had no intention of quitting and had never asked anyone to prepare a resignation letter for me. Why did they send me a resignation form? Did they mistake me for someone else? Why was a resignation letter sent to me? Did they mistake me for someone else? I was shocked and kept asking myself. But no matter how many times I checked, my name was clearly written on it. Still bewildered, I returned to work after my vacation and immediately consulted my manager. However, my manager was just as stunned and completely confused about the resignation letter with my name on it. At that moment, Alex appeared and looked at me with a sly grin. I received a resignation letter in the mail addressed to me. Do you know anything about it, Alex? I asked. I noticed something strange. Alex wasn't even trying to hide his amusement as he watched my flustered reaction with a smug smile. At that moment, my suspicion became certainty. You must have been the one who had that resignation letter sent. Alex met my questioning gaze and grinned even more, as if enjoying the situation. Looks like you don't fit in with our bank's way of doing things, David. Single mom, high school graduate, and you're fired. The loud declaration caused the entire office to fall silent. It was true that I grew up in a single-parent household and started working after high school, but I had never broadcasted that to everyone. Alex's decision to air my personal life like that caught the attention of everyone in the bank. Despite my flawless record and contributions that boosted the bank's success, it seemed I was no longer needed here. If that's the case, the next step for me was to start job hunting. As that thought crossed my mind, I found myself surprisingly calm and composed. Understood. Thank you for everything. I accepted with a cheerful tone, signed the resignation letter on the spot, and began packing up my belongings. I bid farewell to my colleagues, who were buzzing about the sudden situation. Thank you for all your support. I'll be on my way now. If Alex kept running the bank this recklessly, there wouldn't be a future for this place. I felt bad for leaving my colleagues behind, but once I finished packing, I left the office. As I walked away, my coworkers watched me, visibly stunned. Some of them looked like they were about to cry and begged me to reconsider. Considering my sales record, their reaction made sense. And as for Alex, he stood there with his mouth agape, staring at me. He must have expected me to panic and fall apart after being handed my resignation. Instead, I had boldly declared my departure and left the company without hesitation. Alex looked completely blindsided and stood in shock for a while. Just as I was about to walk out of the office, Alex finally called out, "Are you really going to quit? Once you leave, you'll be unemployed starting tomorrow. Who would hire someone from a single-parent background with only a high school diploma? You don't need to worry about me. This is my decision." Alex's eyes darkened nervously, and he seemed flustered, but I stayed firm in my resolve and left the room. On my way out, I submitted the resignation letter and finalized the paperwork to use up the remaining vacation days. There was nothing left for me to do at this bank. However, just as I stepped outside the building, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. When I turned around, I saw Alex standing there, his face flushed red. "Do you really understand what you've done? You just quit the company. You know I didn't force you to resign, right?" "Yes, I chose to leave of my own free will. I have no complaints and no misunderstandings. I'm sorry for causing such a commotion." When Alex heard my response, he looked stunned. He had probably expected me to beg to stay, crying for a second chance. But I had already made up my mind to leave the bank behind. With one final nod, I headed home for good. I didn't actually think I'd quit on the spot. However, that brief moment of peace didn't last long. The next morning, as I was eating breakfast, my phone suddenly rang. The caller number showed it was from my former workplace, the bank I had just left yesterday. Why are they calling me? Did I forget to wrap up something? Curious, but unable to ignore the call, I picked up. The moment I hit the answer button, a loud voice boomed through the line. "Finally, you answered. What's the deal with that? Get to the bank immediately, you hear me? With all due respect, I've already resigned. I can't think of any reason why I'd need to come in." I was about to hang up when Alex continued shouting at me. "There's something we need to discuss about your resignation. Just get here quickly. I can't explain everything over the phone." "Understood. I'll come over." I knew that if I hung up, Alex would keep calling until I agreed. Annoyed by his persistence, I quickly got ready. My mom watched me curiously as I prepared to leave. The bank called me in, so I'll be out for a bit. I gave her a brief explanation and left the house. About 30 minutes later, I arrived at my former workplace. As soon as I headed toward my old desk, a colleague rushed over to me, visibly flustered. They led me to the president's office and explained the situation along the way. Apparently, shortly after arriving at work, Alex started screaming nonsensically and throwing a fit. He then demanded that I be called in and even started dialing my number himself. Wondering what this was all about, I entered the president's office, which was adorned with luxurious carpeting. Inside, I saw Alex waving a newspaper around with a half-crazed expression. "Is this David mentioned in the article you?" "Oh, I see. The interview I gave has already been published." When Alex heard my reply, his face turned pale and red, shifting between the two shades in quick succession. I let out a sigh. In my mind, it was clear now that Alex hadn't been briefed by his father, the former president. The article was about the future of the financial industry, shaped by emerging technologies such as AI. I had been interviewed as a representative expert on the server infrastructure needed for banks of the future. After graduating from high school, I joined a local company. The main reason I entered the workforce right after high school was because my dad had passed away suddenly from an illness when I was in 5th grade. My mom, who had been a stay-at-home mom until then, suddenly became responsible for supporting our entire household. I was deeply grateful to her for working tirelessly from morning till night and promised myself I would repay her kindness once I grew up. My mom found work as a part-time administrative assistant at a local company. She had never worked before, learned on the job while also earning the necessary qualifications, and poured herself into her work. Thanks to her, I had a smooth school life and graduated elementary school without any issues. I went on to the local high school, where I made good friends and enjoyed my everyday life. However, as everyone around me started to seriously think about their future education or careers, I began to realize just how much of a burden my mom had been carrying. I couldn't continue living carefreely while she worked so hard. That's when I made a firm decision. "Mom, I'm going to work after I graduate high school. I can't let you bear the burden alone." So starting next year, I want you to take better care of yourself and rest more. One fall morning, just as I had started my last year of high school, I told her this. But my mom firmly insisted that I should continue my education. The truth is, I was at the top of my class for all 3 years of high school and excelled in academics. Math was my strongest subject, and I even placed in the top 100 in the state during a national standardized test and received an award. Because of this, my mom believed that I should continue my studies through college. I wasn't willing to back down. I understand what you're saying, but going to college isn't my life's goal. What's more important is that I grow into someone who can stand on his own. I vividly remember the surprised look in her eyes when I said that. It was the first time my mom realized how seriously I'd been thinking about my future. To ease her concerns, I carefully explained that I already had a specific company in mind where I wanted to work and walked her through my life plans. After hours of talking, she finally understood that I wasn't choosing a job because we couldn't afford tuition, but because I genuinely wanted to work at that company. And so, I graduated from high school and immediately joined a local company. The first time I got a paycheck, I felt the full weight of hard work and the value of earning my own money. The company was an IT firm, and with my knack for math, I quickly became engrossed in programming. It turned out the work suited me perfectly. I absorbed knowledge at a pace that amazed even my senior coworkers. I didn't just keep up. I mastered every new technology that emerged, one after another. In particular, I became a world-class expert in cybersecurity. It was my reputation as a trailblazer in the industry that caught the attention of Alex's father, the former president of the bank. Back when he was still in good health, he approached me with a request to secure personal and financial data for the bank's future. Moved by his desire to protect the local community who trusted the bank with their savings, I decided to switch jobs and join the bank. Since then, I've led the bank's cybersecurity efforts, revolutionizing its security protocols. Over the years, I developed innovative technologies that reshaped industry standards. My achievements caught the attention of not only the financial world, but other industries as well, leading to numerous interview requests. One of those interviews was what led to the newspaper article that caused this commotion. Alex's face was as red as a tomato as he waved the newspaper featuring my name and photo in large print around and raged. "Why are you being featured so prominently? You're supposed to be a high school diploma from a single-parent household." With all due respect, Alex, my work has nothing to do with my background or education. Isn't it the results that matter more than how someone was raised? Alex, whose face had turned red all the way to his hairline, was still unwilling to accept my response. Frustrated, he turned on the TV, but the news channel was also showing a segment about my interview. The security system I had unveiled was far more versatile and advanced than any previous solutions. The interviewer on screen enthusiastically praised my accomplishments, marveling at how lucky the company was to have me before concluding the segment. The program then transitioned to the next feature. The screen transitioned to the next feature. Could it be that David is really someone of global importance? Why does our bank have someone who's making headlines on TV? After watching the news, Alex seemed to finally recognize my value. He muttered to himself repeatedly, then suddenly raised his head and stepped toward me. "I understand the situation. You've surely learned your lesson by now, so I'm granting you a special chance to return. Starting today, I expect you to work hard for the bank again." "What? Why are you saying this now? I already submitted my resignation yesterday." Alex was the one who kicked me out in the first place, and naturally, I had no intention of returning to this bank. I was sure that yesterday's exchange had made that clear. But Alex stared at me with his mouth hanging open. "Resignation? That document is void." Of course, having a globally recognized figure in our bank would be a huge point of pride for our security. Even so, I've already accepted an offer at a new company. "I'm not coming back," I calmly explained. Alex's eyes narrowed in frustration. "Why? I'm telling you that you're welcome to return. There's no need to be stubborn and lie. This bank gave a high school graduate from a single-parent household like you a chance. Just come back right now. Will you pay me $330,000 a month?" Alex's jaw dropped so far it looked like it might unhinge. $330,000 a month. You must mean per year. Even $30,000 a year is generous for someone with your background, but I'll make an exception for you. No, I meant $30,000 per month. That's how much my new company values my skills. When I stated this calmly, sweat began to drip down Alex's forehead. Even after seeing my accomplishments broadcast nationwide, he still couldn't fully grasp my worth due to his outdated way of judging people by their upbringing and education. As Alex opened and closed his mouth like a fish gasping for air, I continued, "If you can't meet those terms, I won't return to this bank." "That's ridiculous. There's no way you could have found a new job so quickly after just resigning yesterday." Alex spat his words at me, glaring fiercely. He was clearly upset that I had rejected his offer and was desperate to find fault with me. No matter how famous you are, no company would hire someone who just resigned out of the blue. No responsible manager would take that risk. That's why I rejoined a company that knows me well, the local IT firm that hired me when I first started working after high school. Hearing my answer, Alex stood there dumbfounded. A local IT company capable of paying $330,000 a month? There's only one. Yes, the very company you're thinking of. They've been a loyal client of this bank for years, but after hearing about everything that led to my resignation, they're considering their partnership. Our town is home to one of the nation's top IT companies, known across the country. Anyone who hears its name recognizes it instantly. The reason they had stayed loyal to this bank was because of me. In fact, the bank's financial stability largely depended on that partnership. Even someone as out of touch as Alex understood the value of that company. His mouth hung open, and his face grew visibly paler by the second. "There's no way David, a high school graduate from a single-parent household, joined that company, and now they're canceling their contract with us." "Yes, I'm a high school graduate, and yes, I grew up in a single-parent household. But a person's value isn't determined by their background or education. It's defined by their achievements. Don't you think?" As I spoke calmly, Alex's face turned red, then blue, then red again. "I'll double your salary." "No, I'll pay you $30,000 a month. You're indispensable to this bank. I admit that now. Please come back and help us keep that contract." Alex's face twisted in desperation as he pleaded with me, his clenched fists trembling. Knowing Alex's pride, I was sure he had never imagined he'd be in a position where he had to lower himself like this. But now that the survival of the bank was at stake, he finally realized the gravity of the situation and was willing to change his attitude. If Alex had recognized his mistakes earlier, things might not have come to this. However, rather than forgive Alex, who dismissed the opinions of senior employees and labeled them as dead weight, I could only feel pity for him. "So, I won't be returning to his bank as you envisioned. Please continue doing your best with your young team," I said, giving Alex a look filled with both pity and disbelief. Once I had said everything I needed to, I quietly left the room. Even as I walked away, I could hear Alex's pitiful voice calling after me, trying to stop me. Eventually, I heard a loud thud as he collapsed to the floor, crying out loudly, but I no longer cared. Without me leading the security team, I was sure the bank would soon be in trouble. And if the top IT company in the area pulled out their dealings with the bank, it was only a matter of time before the bank's financial situation worsened. I hated the thought of my former colleagues being caught up in this mess. However, Alex's reckless management had brought this upon the bank, and there was nothing I could do about it. As I left the president's office, I glanced back for just a moment. In the lavishly decorated room, Alex stood frozen in place, speechless. After that, I rejoined the IT company where I had previously worked and settled back into an enjoyable daily routine. Having worked there before, I was able to fit in easily with both the office environment and my colleagues. Moreover, since the job focused on developing security systems, my specialty, I had no trouble enjoying a peaceful and productive work life. I had forgotten just how fulfilling it could be to work with trustworthy teammates and focus on meaningful projects, something I'd lost sight of during my time at the bank under Alex's leadership. However, during one lunch break, I came across a piece of news that made me do a double take. It was an announcement that the bank I used to work for was facing bankruptcy. Just as I had warned Alex, losing the partnership with our IT firm had caused their revenue to plummet. Worse yet, rumors about the bank losing a major partner spread quickly, causing other businesses to also cut ties. The news segment even pointed out that the bank's downfall was largely due to its loss of skilled employees. Based on the timing and details, they were most likely referring to me. I felt bad for my former coworkers, but I was also genuinely surprised to see my contributions recognized to that extent. When I returned to the office after lunch, I was informed that a visitor was waiting for me. When I reached the lobby, I was shocked to see Alex standing there. He looked much different from how he had during my time at the bank. His face was pale, and he seemed jittery, clinging to me with desperate eyes. As soon as I greeted him, Alex burst into tears and dropped to his knees at my feet. "The bank is going to collapse if this continues. Please come back and save the bank," Alex cried out loud, causing a scene as he rambled on about the bank's situation. Even though I hadn't asked, I listened as he went on. To avoid the worried stares of passing employees, I took Alex to a nearby cafe. There, I listened as he gave me a detailed explanation of the bank's current state. Apparently, after I left, Alex had taken it upon himself to oversee the maintenance of the bank's security system. However, his pride didn't allow him to continue using the system I had created. I can't trust a system made by a high school graduate from a single-parent home. We need to order a new one. Alex proudly introduced a new security system. However, during the transition, numerous issues arose, causing major disruptions to the bank's daily operations. As a result, not only businesses but also individual customers began withdrawing from the bank one after another. Alex explained that he had been scolded daily by the former president, his father, who blamed him as the responsible party. Once he finished his explanation, Alex broke down in tears again, bowing his head and pleading with me. "Your former colleagues are in trouble. Please come back to the bank. I was forced out by you, Alex. You even mailed me my resignation letter. Don't act like it didn't happen." When I first saw that resignation letter with my name on it, I felt deeply hurt and sad. But after returning to my current workplace, where my value is recognized and I can thrive, I found immense satisfaction. Working with reliable colleagues and being able to contribute meaningfully has left me with no complaints. That's why I had no reason to return to the bank. Please, I'm begging you. If you don't come back, I'm going to be removed as the president. I understand your situation, but that doesn't give me a reason to return to the bank. I respected the former president, so please pass my regards to him. I was utterly disappointed with Alex, who only cared about saving his own position. With that thought, I left the cafe behind me. I could still hear Alex sobbing and wailing. In the end, the bank was driven to the brink of bankruptcy. However, whether fortunately or unfortunately, it was acquired by a major bank, and my former colleagues were able to keep their jobs. I was relieved that they regained some stability in their lives, though not everyone's situation remained the same. The most prominent change was Alex's fate. Alex was held accountable for his poor leadership and was forced to resign. But the story didn't end there. During the pre-merger investigation, it was discovered that Alex had been embezzling bank funds under the guise of reforming the bank. Alex had filed personal expenses, such as private dinners and entertainment, as business costs. It went as far as using company funds for his private trips and luxury car purchases. The investigation revealed that he had misappropriated a significant amount of money. Alex was charged with embezzlement, arrested, and faced a lawsuit demanding repayment of damages, along with criminal charges. Although he had already been dismissed, he was still held liable. He's currently awaiting trial. Once a man who lorded over us bankers with arrogance, Alex is now pale with fear, spending his days trembling as he desperately tries to avoid punishment. It addressed my uneducated, fictitious father-in-law. At my beloved daughter's wedding, I noticed something incredible inscribed on the nameplate, despite the fact that we are not blood relatives. Is this some kind of mistake? I questioned the groom. Then he said icily, "This is how I really feel. You and your daughter are not real family." His parents said, "You are merely a phony relationship." Her parents' lack of education and ragged appearance is pathetic. Please don't be involved in her life after today. When my daughter noticed this, she seized my hand at the reception and said, "Daddy, let's go home." You're right. We abruptly departed the venue after that. However, this incident was just the start of something far more startling that would occur a few days later. You can call me Michael Owens. I have been employed as a construction worker ever since I finished middle school. Everything in my life changed all at once. My wife Melissa was admitted to the hospital, and I was working at the site as normal when I got a call from them. They informed me that she was in critical condition after her condition abruptly deteriorated. We hurried to the hospital after I hastened to pick up my daughter Sophie from daycare. Melissa was barely aware and breathing heavily when we walked into the room. I held Melissa's hand tightly and continued yelling her name because I didn't want to believe what was happening to me. Are you able to hear me? It's me. Look, Sophie is also present. Melissa blinked slowly and mumbled something in a low voice in response to Sophie's and my words. Then her hand lost its strength, and I realized she was dead. Melissa was just 25. She was too young to pass away. If only we'd discovered the sickness sooner. I wish I had made her visit the hospital. That kind of regret kept coming to me. I couldn't accept the reality in front of me, even though I knew there was nothing I could do at this point. Our marriage lasted only a few years. Were we not meant to create so many wonderful experiences with each other? A little set of warm hands cupped my tear-streaked face as I knelt next to her bed and started crying. Daddy, are you okay? Sophie, my 4-year-old daughter, brushed away my tears and gave me a worried look. Thank you, Sophie. Still not understanding that Melissa was no longer with us, I went through the motions on the day of the funeral, mechanically greeting family members. It seemed like a dream to be gazing at her pictures while surrounded by scented flowers. My uncle, who I hadn't seen in a long time, came cautiously toward me at that moment, looking around to make sure no one was looking. Michael, can we talk for a moment? We went to a more peaceful area when I gave a nod. Before he spoke, he let out a long sigh. I really apologize for what transpired. At her age, nobody anticipated something like this. Yeah, I was at a loss for words. At least you were able to be with her in her final moments. That's something to be grateful for. I forced myself to speak, trying to stay strong, but I could feel my voice tremble. He put a hand on my shoulder and spoke in a comforting tone. You must be hurting, I know, but maybe this is a good time to think about Sophie's future. Sophie? What do you mean? I frowned without thinking. He hesitated, then looked me straight in the eye and made a suggestion. Michael, how about letting Melissa's mother in Tokyo take care of Sophie? What? There are better schools in Tokyo. I think she could get a better education there than out here, in the countryside. And raising her on your own must be tough. I was speechless. Just then, my aunt, who had been listening nearby, interrupted. Michael, there's no way you can raise that child while working alone. Besides, she's not even your biological child. She was Melissa's daughter from a previous relationship. She said it in a harsh tone. Other relatives started agreeing with her. She's not your blood. That's why raising her will only get harder as time goes on. Even without a blood connection, love is enough. I tried to speak up to say that love was enough, but I was quickly cut off. Love alone isn't enough. Parenting needs experience, and a mother's presence is important. You can't do it alone. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I understand how you all feel, but no, you don't understand. My aunt interrupted again. You're still young. You should think about your own life. It would be best for Sophie if you left her with Melissa's mother. I looked around. Everyone was nodding in agreement. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Sophie may not be my biological child, but she is my daughter, and I love her with all my heart. I raised my voice, and the room went silent. I will raise her on my own. That was a promise I made to Melissa, and it's something I'm determined to do. My uncle opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand to stop him. I'll say it again. Sophie is my daughter. Blood doesn't matter. We're family. Please stop discussing her future like she's someone else's responsibility. With everyone's eyes on my back, I returned to Melissa's portrait. Melissa, I'll keep my promise. I'll raise Sophie with everything I've got. I met Melissa near the end of spring. It was during a chance visit to a cafe with cherry blossoms dancing in the air that we ended up sitting next to each other. Excuse me, is this seat taken? No, please go ahead. That was the beginning of our relationship. Melissa had a brightness like the sun, something I didn't have. She brought me out of my shell and opened my eyes to the world beyond. But after about 2 months, Melissa confessed something serious. Michael, I need to talk to you, Melissa said as she asked me to meet her. At the cafe, sitting across from me, Melissa spoke while keeping her eyes lowered. I'm pregnant. For a moment, I was speechless. What? She was carrying another man's child. It had happened before we met, and she was no longer with him, but I never saw it coming. When Melissa told me about the baby, I couldn't hide how confused and overwhelmed I felt. We had only just met, and I wasn't ready to think about becoming a father to someone else's child. What are you planning to do? When I asked her that, Melissa answered with tears in her eyes. I deeply regret the careless decisions I made that led to this pregnancy. I'm going to have an abortion, so please don't worry. Hearing that left me with complicated feelings. An abortion? Oh, I'm sorry for saying all this. You deserve to be happy being with someone like me. Before she could finish, I reached out and gently took her hand. Wait, Melissa, don't blame yourself like that. She looked at me with a surprised expression. Yes, I was shocked at first, but the more I got to know you, the more I realized I wanted to be with you. Tears filled her eyes. Really? Even someone like me? Yeah, really. Most people think family has to mean blood relations, but there are plenty of families out there who are connected by blood and still completely broken, just like the one I grew up in. Melissa quietly listened to my words. I know I can't fully understand what you're going through, but I want to stand by you, and I want to help raise this new life with you. I want us to be a family. Melissa looked at me, her expression a mix of surprise and joy. Michael, the truth is, I had thought about going through with the abortion without telling you, but this child came to me for a reason, and I wasn't sure about the decision. More than anything, I didn't want to keep secrets from someone as honest as you. Thank you for accepting me. I gently wrapped my arms around her. From now on, we'll face everything together, the three of us. And so a new chapter of our life began. While supporting Melissa during her pregnancy, we started preparing for marriage. People around us had mixed reactions, but we trusted each other and kept moving forward. Then, as the fall deepened, Sophie was born. After being present for her delivery, I gently touched her tiny hand in the newborn nursery. Sophie gripped my finger tightly, and in that moment, her soft, warm hand melted all the fear and uncertainty that had been weighing me down. I'm going to protect this child. I want to live my life for her. That was the moment I made up my mind. Melissa suffered from postpartum depression, but we supported each other through it, middle of the night feedings and changing diapers. We had no experience, but watching Sophie grow brought a joy that nothing else could match. Michael, thank you. If you weren't here, I don't know what I would have done. As Melissa said that, I gently pressed my finger to her lips. Don't think about the past anymore. We have a future together with Sophie. Let's fill it with as many happy memories as we can. Melissa nodded, tears in her eyes. There were tough times, but we believed in each other and faced them as a team. Even without blood ties, the bond of love in our family grew stronger every day. But that happiness didn't last. Melissa's illness was discovered. At first, we thought she was just feeling a little under the weather. But Melissa kept saying, I'm just a little tired, and began lying down more often. With her days filled caring for Sophie and handling the housework, it became harder and harder to find time to go to the hospital. I'll be fine. I'll feel better soon, she'd say with a smile. But her face grew paler by the day. I was worried, too, and suggested several times that she go to the hospital. But Melissa kept putting it off, saying, I won't make it in time to pick Sophie up from daycare. Even on weekends, something would always come up. Sophie's needs are my work. And before we knew it, Melissa's condition worsened drastically. One morning, while preparing breakfast in the kitchen, she suddenly collapsed. We called an ambulance and rushed her to the hospital. After tests, the doctors told us it was already too late. If only you'd noticed sooner. If only you'd brought her in earlier. The doctor's words cut through me like a blade. Even after she was admitted, Melissa kept worrying about Sophie and me. I'm sorry. I should have taken better care of myself, she said, and I couldn't say anything in response. Caught up in the demands of daily life, I had noticed her declining health, but failed to take proper action. It's something I'll regret for the rest of my life. After Melissa passed away, I threw myself into work and raising Sophie. Coming home to the house filled with memories of Melissa was always painful, but Sophie's presence kept me going. Daddy, welcome home. She would greet me at the door after coming back from daycare. Just seeing her smile could wash away the exhaustion of an entire day. Ever since graduating from middle school, I'd lived on my own so I could take care of myself. But balancing work and raising a child was more difficult than I ever imagined. When I said, Sophie, how about curry tonight? Her eyes lit up as she answered, Yay, I love your curry, Daddy. She ran to the kitchen and put on her apron. I want to help. Seeing how eager she was made me smile. Thanks. Can you help me wash the carrots? As we cooked together, Sophie happily told me about her day at daycare. Hearing her voice filled me with a deep sense of happiness. After work, I'd pick her up from daycare every single day. Back home, there was no time to rest, so I'd dive into chores, make dinner, and give her a bath. It was a nonstop routine. "Daddy, let's play with the duckies in the bath tonight." She'd shout as she ran to the bathroom. Dragging my tired body, I followed after her. "All right, but not for too long." "Okay." As I read her favorite picture book at bedtime, I reflected on the day. "Daddy, let's play again tomorrow." "Okay." She said that and closed her eyes in my arms. Looking at her sleeping face, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Hearing her call me daddy gave me the strength to keep going no matter how tough things got. For someone like me who grew up without knowing the warmth of family love, Sophie was the greatest gift life had given me. Then one day, I came home from work to find Sophie holding a piece of paper, waiting excitedly. "Look, Daddy, Miss Thompson praised me today." She proudly showed me a paper with the word, "Thank you," written neatly on it. "That's amazing. Your handwriting is getting so good, Sophie." I couldn't help but praise her out loud. Sophie's voice sparkled with joy. "I want to write as beautifully as you do, Daddy." Her words brought a lump to my throat. "All right then, let's practice together. I'll teach you." "Okay," I said, gently patting her head. On weekends, we often went to the park together. As I pushed her on the swing, my thoughts drifted to Melissa. "Your mom would be so proud of you, you know." The words slipped out of my mouth. "Is Mommy watching us?" Sophie looked up at the sky and asked. "Yeah, I'm sure she is. She's probably incredibly proud of you, Sophie." Sophie beamed and began swinging even higher. "Mommy, watch me, okay?" Her voice echoed through the clear blue sky. Balancing work and raising a child was never easy. There were times when I was so exhausted. I felt like giving up on everything. But Sophie's smile and the way she called me daddy always gave me the strength to keep going. One night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, I sat looking at a photo of Melissa and quietly spoke to it. "Melissa, our daughter is growing up to be an amazing girl. I miss you so much, but having Sophie here gives me the courage to keep moving forward. Thank you for this beautiful gift you left me." When Sophie turned 6, I decided it was time to tell her the truth. One evening during story time, I sat her on my lap and gently began to speak. "Sophie, Daddy has something important to tell you." She looked up at me with her big eyes. "What is it, Daddy?" I took a deep breath and continued. "You know, you actually have two daddies." "What two?" Sophie looked surprised and asked again. "That's right. One is me, the daddy right here with you. The other is the one who helped bring you into Mommy's tummy." Sophie looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "But you're still my daddy." Her words filled my heart with warmth. "That's right. I'll always be your daddy." After that, we talked about it from time to time. One day, while playing on the swings at the park, she asked, "Daddy, I have two daddies, right?" "That's right, Sophie. But I think you're my real daddy." "Why do you think that?" "Because you're always with me." Time passed, and Sophie graduated from college and got a job with a company in Tokyo. Living apart from the daughter I'd raised brought a bittersweet mix of pride and loneliness. One evening, as I was preparing dinner after coming home from work, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, and it was Sophie. "Hey, Daddy, is this a good time?" "Oh, Sophie, you usually text." "This is a surprise." "Well, I'm coming home next month, and there's someone I want you to meet." Her voice sounded slightly nervous. "Someone you want me to meet?" "Yeah, I've been seeing someone." "I see. Are you mad, Daddy?" Her voice trembled a little. "No, I'm not mad. I was just a little surprised. I guess my little girl's really growing up." "Really? I'm so glad." "So what's he like?" "He's kind, dependable, and hardworking. He always treats me with respect." "I'm glad to hear that. If you're happy, that's all that matters." "Thank you, Daddy. We're actually planning to come back together. I'd really like you to meet him." "All right. I'll be looking forward to it." Hearing that Sophie was stepping into her own future made me feel both proud and a little bit lonely. A month later, Sophie returned home with her fiancé. When the doorbell rang, I felt a slight nervousness as I opened the door. "Daddy, I'm home." Her cheerful voice filled the entryway. "Welcome back, Sophie." Standing next to her was a tall young man. He gave a polite bow and introduced himself. "Nice to meet you, sir. I'm David Foster. It's an honor to meet you. Thanks for coming all this way." I'm Michael Owens, Sophie's dad. I reached out my hand for a handshake. David was a pleasant and respectful young man, wearing a neat suit and speaking with confidence. He carried himself well. I couldn't help but feel a bit self-conscious about my plain clothes. Please come on in. I invited them into the house. We sat down in the living room with tea and began talking. So, David, what kind of work do you do? I asked in a calm tone. After graduating from university, I started working at my father's company. I'm in the business planning division, helping to launch new ventures. Sounds impressive. What university did you attend? I graduated from Tokyo University with a degree in economics. Tokyo University? That's a great school, Sophie added with a smile. David even started a business back in university. Is that so? David looked a little shy as he replied. Yes, my friends and I developed an app for students. It didn't work out, though. Even failure is a valuable experience. I bet it taught you a lot and shaped who you are today. Absolutely. That experience helped me grow. As we continued to talk, I came to truly appreciate David's character. David, there's something I'd like to talk to you about, I said, my tone turning serious. David sat up straight, a bit tense. Yes, sir. I've been working as a construction laborer ever since I graduated from middle school. David didn't look surprised, and he nodded with respect. That's an incredibly demanding job. I respect that. I hesitated for a moment, then went on. And I'm not related to Sophie by blood. David's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly regained his composure and answered with a steady voice. I didn't know that until now, but if it weren't for your hard work and love raising Sophie, she and I would never have met. His words moved me deeply. Thank you, David. Just then, Sophie chimed in with a cheerful smile. Yeah, I never really mentioned it, but Daddy and I aren't related by blood. She said it with such ease, like it was no big deal. Because I've always believed you were my real dad. I never once cared about blood ties. And I never thought twice about you being a construction laborer. If anything, I'm proud of it. David was silent for a moment, clearly surprised, but then gave a warm smile. That sounds just like you, Sophie. I figured you weren't the kind of person who'd care about things like that, so I didn't think I had to bring it up. David looked at me seriously and said, Sophie grew up to be such an honest and strong person because she was raised by a sincere man like you, Mr. Owens. I felt my eyes start to burn with emotion. Thank you, David. Please take good care of her. David gave a firm nod. I promise I'll make her happy. Seeing the two of us, Sophie smiled brightly. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, David. I'm really truly happy. And with that, the meeting ended in a warm and peaceful mood. Then the wedding day finally arrived. Since David's parents had been too busy with work to attend any pre-wedding gatherings, this was the first time both families would be meeting. As I sat in my chair, I noticed members of the groom's family casting glances in my direction. The chatter around us died down, and in the silence, I overheard faint whispers. I couldn't catch the exact words, but it was clear they were talking about me. Nice to meet you, the groom's father said stiffly, his face stern. Beside him, the groom's mother forced a smile, though her eyes and mouth were visibly strained. Nice to meet you as well. I'm Michael Owens, Sophie's father. At first, the conversation stayed on safe topics such as the weather and the view from the venue. But once the topic shifted to me, the atmosphere changed. The groom's father cleared his throat and spoke. By the way, Mr. Owens, I heard from my son that you work in construction. May I ask what department you graduated from in university? Was it engineering? Before I could respond, he continued. We have several relatives who graduated from top national universities and now work at major general contractors. Then the groom's mother chimed in. Oh no, dear. Mr. Owens actually entered the workforce right after middle school and has been working on site ever since. Her words left me momentarily stunned, but I quickly regained my composure. Yes, that's correct. I started on the ground and have since moved into mentoring younger workers, but the groom's mother ignored my words and pressed further. Oh, right. I'd like to confirm something. While we're here, is it true that you're not Sophie's biological father? Yes, we're not connected by blood, but I've raised her as my own daughter, and I've always seen her as family. To his mother, who was looking me straight in the eye with obvious contempt, I calmly spoke my truth. Then the groom's father added, We only found out just before the ceremony that Sophie had such a complicated background. It's been quite a shock for our entire family. I answered quietly but firmly. Regardless of blood, Sophie is my beloved daughter. That has never changed, and it never will. I'll continue to support and love her as I always have. The groom's mother scoffed through her nose. Do you really think love alone is enough to raise a child? Raising someone else's child must have been quite the burden. Has Sophie never expressed interest in meeting her real father? He might have had a better job than a construction laborer after all. Those words nearly pushed me over the edge. But I clenched my fists and reminded myself not to let emotions get the better of me. Not here. And then Sophie entered the room in her wedding dress. The moment I saw her, every hardship and memory came rushing back. Thinking about all the hardships Sophie had overcome, my heart swelled with emotion. All the frustration I had felt earlier melted away, replaced only by pride and joy. We moved to the chapel, and I walked down the aisle with Sophie at my side. I held her hand firmly, praying that the ceremony would go smoothly. As the ceremony came to an end, I felt both relieved and overjoyed at the sight of her smiling face. More than anything, I wanted to continue watching over her happiness. That thought filled me with a deep sense of pride as a father. Later, I went to the restroom to wash my tear-streaked face. As I opened the door, I overheard a conversation by the sink. Did you see that name card? Yeah, I did. It was wild. The guests were laughing and talking, but I didn't understand what they were referring to. I brushed it off and returned to my seat at the reception. As I walked in, I noticed people chuckling. And glancing my way, I found my seat and sat down, and my eyes immediately landed on the nameplate in front of me. Next to my name, it read, "The uneducated and poor fake father." I instantly recalled the restroom conversation, though they were talking about me. Staring at the nameplate in disbelief, I realized the people around me were laughing out loud. Shame and anger surged inside me, but I knew that if I lost my temper here, they would use it against me. That's how construction laborers are, hot-headed and unrefined. So I bowed my head and waited for the attention to shift elsewhere. That's when David and his parents appeared nearby. I looked up and asked, "David, is this some kind of mistake or maybe part of the entertainment?" Though I knew this wasn't a joke, I desperately hoped I could brush it off that way. But David coldly replied, "It's exactly how I feel." His parents followed. "You and Sophie aren't even related. You're a fake family. It's pitiful that she had to grow up with a low-educated, shabby parent like you. Please don't involve yourself in her life anymore." Where had the polite young man I met gone now? He looked at me with the same cold contempt as his parents. I couldn't make sense of what was happening. My head spun. Then Sophie came running over to me. "Daddy, let's go." "Yeah, let's go." As we left the venue, we could hear whispers behind us. I've never seen a bride walk out in the middle of her own reception. Like father, like daughter. The spring night air outside was still chilly as it brushed against our skin. Our footsteps quickened naturally as we walked in silence toward the car. The noise of the crowd faded. Behind us, replaced by a heavy quiet between us. "Daddy, can I have the keys?" Sophie asked softly. I pulled the car keys from my pocket and handed them to her without a word. She got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away slowly. Outside, the streetlights of the highway flashed by in a blur of orange. Inside the car, it was silent, and only the sound of our breathing filled the space. I stared out the window, trying to process everything that had happened. For a while, neither of us said a word. Then Sophie suddenly spoke. "Daddy, thank you." Her words made me look up in surprise. "Why are you thanking me?" "Because even after everything they did, you didn't get angry for my sake." There was no point in getting angry. All of this happened because of me. I let out a dry laugh, bitter with self-blame. But Sophie quickly denied it. "No, that's not true. It happened because I chose the wrong man. And Daddy, if it's a marriage that makes you unhappy, then it's not worth anything to me." Her words hit me hard, so I couldn't say anything in return. I knew there were many times I made her endure loneliness and sacrifices because I stubbornly raised her on my own. And yet, she never once blamed me, and she embraced me with warmth. "Sophie," I couldn't get the words out. "Daddy, I've always been proud that someone who loves me this much isn't even related to me by blood." Her voice was soft, yet filled with quiet strength. "I'm the one who's lucky, Sophie." I'm truly happy to have you in my life. Sophie smiled gently. Daddy, you know, today made me realize something. What is it? That the bond between us is stronger than any other family. Her expression was serious and sincere. I listened quietly to her words. All the days you spent raising me, the laughter, the tears, and everything we shared built something unbreakable between us, Sophie. So, let's keep walking together. Okay. She smiled again. Yeah, of course we will. Before we knew it, the sun had set. The car continued quietly along the night road. After a while, Sophie spoke up again. Daddy, actually, I tore up the marriage registration. She said it with an apologetic look. I looked at her in surprise and asked again. You tore it up? Yeah, ripped it to pieces. I'm mailing it to him tomorrow. I had to hold back a laugh. I see. Honestly, I think that's for the best. Yeah, I think so too, she said, visibly relieved. So, what do you plan to do from here? Sophie thought for a moment. I'm not sure yet, but I don't think I need to rush. You're right. Take your time, Sophie. I want to take some time to reflect on myself, and I'm thinking of coming back home for a while. I think that's a great idea. I'll always be on your side, Sophie. Thanks, Daddy. The car rolled on in silence, but the air between us was warm and comforting. Sophie, want to eat something when we get home? Yeah, I want your omelet. All right then, omelet it is. No matter what lies ahead, I'll walk through life with Sophie. With that vow in my heart, we headed home. Some days later, a news report aired that the foster family company had filed for bankruptcy. Sophie stared at the screen in disbelief. Daddy, their company went bankrupt. I glanced at the TV and felt a complicated knot tighten in my chest. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, David and his parents were standing there. The memory of the wedding came flooding back, and Denise stirred in my chest. It's been a while. David bowed deeply, and his parents followed with stiff, reluctant gestures. The coldness I had seen on David's face at the wedding was no longer there, and his voice carried genuine remorse. But his parents were unchanged. His mother avoided my eyes, and his father stood silently, unmoving. I'm deeply sorry for what happened back then. David bowed deeply and continued, his voice trembling. I followed my parents' wishes and acted disgracefully. I truly regret the way I treated you and your family, Mr. Owens. I could sense the sincerity in David's words, but his parents' awkward demeanor spoke volumes. They still couldn't let go of their pride. It felt like they were only here because David had insisted. It's too late, I replied calmly. Everything had ended on the day of the wedding. Without showing the slightest emotion, I continued. When we first met, didn't my name ring a bell? I'm not sure what you mean. I used to be your company's largest shareholder. I own more than 2/3 of the stock. Hearing those words, David and his parents were left speechless. A shareholder holding over 2/3 of a company's stock can single-handedly make decisions on crucial matters, including dissolving the company. In essence, they hold the reins of power. The truth is, I had planned to tell Sophie after the wedding. I had spent years studying and investing so that she'd never be left with nothing if anything happened to me. I started with the life insurance Melissa had left behind. It wasn't just money, it was her love and hopes as well. And I wanted Sophie to have all of it. In time, I built up enough wealth to ensure we could live without worry. And with that fortune, I became the largest shareholder in David's family company, intending to gift it to Sophie after marriage. But after the wedding was called off, I sold the shares to a trusted associate who had been waiting for the chance. Since I never attended shareholder meetings, they had never seen my face. To them, I was just a name on paper. After I sold the shares, the company's condition deteriorated rapidly. They must have made many enemies. Eventually, the shareholders voted to dissolve the company. A year has passed. Since then, the events of that wedding changed everything. David and his parents now live in ruin. They were blamed by relatives, smeared by scandals, and one business partner after another fell into bankruptcy. Their reputation was in tatters, and their lives spiraled downward. Meanwhile, my daughter Sophie chose a different path entirely. She rose from the hardship and became a beacon of hope for many. Daddy, the NPO is officially approved. Just the other day, she came to me glowing with excitement. Congratulations, Sophie. You've really worked hard. I pulled her into a hug. Using the money I had invested, Sophie started a nonprofit to support children without parents. She poured her heart into it. It's because of you, Daddy. You believed in me when it mattered most. Her eyes sparkled with tears of gratitude. During her work, she met Kyle, a single father, and eventually married him. They built a loving, happy home together. Mr. Owens, Sophie has changed both my life and my daughter's. I'll always be grateful for her kindness and strength. Sophie is truly fulfilled now, living a happy life. Even after all that happened at the wedding, she found happiness. Sophie, you really did it. I'm so proud of you. Daddy, I think it's because of what I went through back then that I can feel this happy now. Sophie smiled as she spoke. True happiness often lies beyond the hardships we overcome. Sophie and I learned that lesson firsthand. Since I moved in with Sophie, her husband, and now our grandchild, my life has completely changed. These days, nothing brings me more joy than spending time with my granddaughter. Grandpa, let's go to the park today. Little Kayla tugged at my hand with excitement. All right, let's go, I said, gently patting her head and smiling. Just holding her tiny hand and seeing her smile makes everything in life feel worthwhile. Watching her grow is now the very purpose of my life. Daddy, we found out the baby's gender. Sophie came to me beaming with excitement as she shared the news. It's a boy. Kayla was so excited to be a big sister. The news that another grandchild was on the way filled me with even more anticipation and joy. In this world, it's true that many people still place value on visible things like blood ties, education, and traditional family structures when defining happiness or success. And I understand why those things are easy to measure and compare. Daddy, our family might not be normal, but we're happy, aren't we? Yes, we are. Blood doesn't matter. What's important is the love we share for one another. Happiness comes in many forms. Even if someone doesn't have what society deems as ideal, that doesn't mean they should feel ashamed. When you shift your perspective, you can find seeds of happiness hidden in any situation. And how you nurture those seeds can change your entire life. I love you, Grandpa. In that moment, I felt true happiness in every part of my being. Blood, education, and social status, none of it matters. This right here is my real happiness. You've been fired. A worthless graduate of middle school. The new department manager, Oliver, denigrated me since he thought I had barely completed middle school. He would blast me down like my viewpoint was never worth hearing, even if I stated something perfectly sensible. You are at the bottom of the ladder and incompetent. You've been fired. Thank you for everything. I made the decision to leave the job because I was tired of Oliver and my coworkers who didn't seem to care about me. Then, without holding anything back, I told my folks everything. I am truly sorry. When Oliver received a letter from my parents the following month, he became totally white. I'm 24 years old, and my name is Ryan. In a family of 5, I was the youngest of 3 siblings when I was growing up. David, my older brother, is accountable and takes things seriously. Emily, my older sister, is the epitome of the traditional woman. She is elegant and kind. Ryan, want to play together? Yeah. Then let's have some snacks with me. The two of them always spent time with me, and we had a great relationship. I adored them and held them in high regard. You kids are really close. That's accurate. You're together all the time. Everyone viewed us as a lovely family, and my parents had a close relationship as well. I was the child my parents had later in life in that type of household. I knew I was the one who was pampered by everyone because I was the youngest and somewhat older than my siblings. Ryan is really intelligent. We don't need to be concerned about his future because of his kind of mentality. Exactly. Additionally, he has developed into a very attractive young man. You too, hurry up. Stop it. It was kind of embarrassing, to be honest. Nevertheless, I smiled and accepted their adoration because I loved my family just as much. Ryan, what do you want for your birthday? The newest world map. You really love maps, don't you? World maps have always captivated me. I would research various nations and mentally travel. I pictured myself traveling around Japan, stopping at well-known tourist destinations, or taking a relaxed excursion to undiscovered local treasures. I envisioned seeing Belgian and Croatian World Heritage sites while in Europe. I even considered taking cuisine excursions in Taiwan, sampling delectable delicacies as I went. My parents and siblings constantly complimented me when I told them about those imaginary trips. Their support added even more excitement to my imaginary adventures. They would always say, "Someday, we want to travel overseas with Ryan as our guide." That eventually turned into my dream as well. I recently began working for a travel firm. Here's the plan I personally recommend. Wow, this one looks amazing. Using the knowledge I had accumulated since I was a young child to present vacation arrangements to clients felt like my real calling. I was happiest when I saw consumers light up with excitement about a strategy one had created. One day, my kind and supportive boss Thomas was transferred to another branch. He had taught me everything when I was new and even took me out to eat whenever I succeeded, even in small ways. I'm Oliver. I'll be the new department manager starting today. I graduated from a well-known private university, so I expect you to follow what I say. And just like that, Oliver became my new boss. Oliver was what you would call an academic elitist, constantly bragging about having graduated from a prestigious private university. He brought up the name of that university so persistently that everyone in the office made annoyed faces behind his back, careful not to let him notice. "Hey Ryan, what university did you go to?" Oliver asked me the same way he had asked others. "I didn't attend a university in Japan." When I answered that, he gave me a puzzled look. "Then what high school did you go to?" "I didn't attend high school either." He kept pressing, and though it made me uncomfortable, I answered honestly, because he was still my boss, after all. Oliver then gave me a condescending smile. "So you're a middle school graduate? How did someone like you get into this company? Did you use some weird connection or something?" His exaggerated tone and clear mockery made me feel completely disgusted. Sure, I believe educational background matters when applying for a job, but once you start working, it shouldn't define your value. That's why I was fed up with his constant prying. "I suppose you could call it a connection," was all I said before picking up a call that came in. Work took priority over indulging Oliver's academic ego. "I see. That explains it." I saw him grinning smugly as he said that, but I was too busy handling the call to care. "Hey, middle school graduate." From that point on, Oliver started calling me that. And it didn't stop there. "You can't handle this kind of work, can you? Can you even read this? You understand English?" He kept mocking me like that. Honestly, it was annoying, but I tried not to let it get to me and just focused on my job. However, his constant comments about me being a useless middle school graduate started interfering with my work, and I was gradually losing patience. On top of that, Oliver began telling my clients things like, "This guy's just a useless middle school graduate," and reassigning them to someone else. It got to a point where I couldn't even do my job properly. What should I do about this? I was stuck in that thought when it happened. "Oliver, I have to say, your treatment of Ryan seems completely inappropriate." "What? Ryan has always done his job properly. There's no reason to change his assignments or go around calling him a middle school graduate." My coworker Michelle, unable to stand by and watch any longer, finally spoke up. "You're just a subordinate. Do you think you can talk back to me?" From that moment, Oliver began harassing Michelle as well. "A woman speaking out against a man? Is that your way of trying to get attention? With that face and figure, no one's going to see you as a real woman anyway. What did you just say? How can you say something like that?" He began hurling vulgar comments and making fun of her appearance and body. I was furious, but Michelle stopped me, so I had no choice but to stay silent. "Wow, that's horrible. If we get involved with those two, we'll end up getting treated the same way." Seeing all this, the other coworkers began keeping their distance from both of us. They spoke only when necessary and stopped engaging with us otherwise. Because of Oliver, Michelle and I became isolated at work. "I'm really sorry, Michelle. This is all because of me." "Don't be. I acted on my own because I believed it was the right thing to do." We supported each other and kept doing our job. Oliver was a terrible person, and the workplace atmosphere had become toxic. But even so, I began to notice what made Michelle special. The way she faced clients with sincerity and seriousness was something I felt I needed to learn from. Her presence was what kept me going. Sometime later, Michelle was assisting an older married couple. "Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt." Oliver suddenly barged in. I had a bad feeling and wanted to step in to help Michelle, but I was tied up with another client and couldn't move. I was concerned about her performance, so I came to check on things. "Are you having any trouble? If so, we can assign someone else." Oliver said that right in front of Michelle's clients. It was the same tactic he used on me, and just watching it made my blood boil. Still, I kept my emotions in check and observed without offending my client. Meanwhile, the elderly couple remained calm and composed. Michelle's service has always been courteous. The last trip she helped us plan was excellent. Yes, we're not having any trouble at all. But Oliver clearly didn't like that answer. Still, isn't this itinerary a bit too demanding for an elderly couple? I would never recommend something like this. He dismissed Michelle's plan outright. Calling them elderly was just unnecessary meddling. No, not at all. This was the course we requested. Michelle has been very thoughtful in putting this together. Even so, Oliver was clearly determined to find fault with it. He kept using phrases like elderly and if it were me, trying to discredit Michelle's plan. Stop treating us like we're some helpless old folks. Eventually, the husband lost his temper and shouted at Oliver. My sincerest apologies. We're never doing business here again. Michelle immediately apologized, but the couple left with those words. No need to waste time on customers like that. They were angry because you were disrespectful to them. Shut up. Get back to work. You're the one who interrupted her work in the first place. I held my tongue and decided to check on Michelle later. What? That couple was the president and his wife from that company. Later on, we found out that the couple was the president of a major company and his wife. Since they said they wouldn't come back, it meant we had lost a very important client. This is your fault, Michelle. We lost them because you didn't handle them properly. At first, Oliver was pale with panic over his mistake, but he quickly started blaming Michelle. That's completely unfair. The couple were still interested until you barged in. It was your repeated remarks about their age that upset them. Even Michelle couldn't stay quiet in the face of such unfairness, and she was absolutely right. But then he sneered, "What an arrogant attitude. With that unfeminine face of yours, you'll never get a boyfriend anyway." Huh. Oliver started mocking things completely unrelated to work. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Oliver, that has nothing to do with the job, and it's completely unacceptable to insult Michelle's dignity. I stepped in between them to defend her. Oliver glared at me in surprise, but I stared him down without backing off. What you're saying has nothing to do with the task at hand. On top of that, your comments are a clear violation of our compliance policies. What did you just say? This whole situation started because you interfered with Michelle's work. She is not to blame for the couple leaving angry. Frankly, Oliver, this is your fault. You little. Seeing it as a good opportunity, I spoke my mind honestly. Oliver flew into a rage. How dare you talk back to me? You're just a useless middle school graduate. Now he started insulting me too. Then he gave a smug grin. You're fired. A useless middle school graduate gets fired. He pointed at me as he declared it. But unlike him, I stayed calm. As far as I know, a department manager doesn't have the authority to fire an employee. I'll submit your resignation myself. And you think HR will just process that? The head of HR is a friend of mine. He'll do whatever I say. No matter how many facts I stated, he kept insisting he could fire me. I glanced around, and the other coworkers had their heads down, trying not to get involved. That's why you're fired. You're a useless nobody. Understood. Thank you for everything. I had enough of Oliver, who looked down on me, and of the coworkers who didn't lift a finger to help. I said it coldly and decided to leave the company. Ryan, Michelle, if you can take some time off, maybe until next month. The one thing I was worried about was Michelle, but at that moment, there was nothing I could do for her. So I left the company. Ryan, what are you doing here so late? Did something happen? I wanted to talk to you about something. I called my brother as soon as I left the office. I had actually told him before that I was struggling to get along with my boss. In that case, why don't you come work for our company? He invited me without hesitation. The truth is, my family runs a major hotel chain. It's a well-known luxury resort company in Japan, famous for being fully booked most of the time. That hotel empire is my family's business. Sorry about this, David. Don't be. Honestly, I was hoping you'd join us sooner. Both my brother and sister work for our father's company. I had chosen to work at a travel agency because I wanted to gain experience on my own without relying on my family. I really did enjoy working at the travel agency, though. But in the end, I transferred to my father's company. Our resort hotels are located in 5 places across Japan, plus 1 in Hawaii. All of them are extremely popular and notoriously hard to book. Thankfully, we're always at full capacity, and a 6-month wait is standard. However, thanks to my connection, my old workplace, the travel agency, was given priority booking access. So, tell me again, why did you quit? What did that boss do to you? Well, I told them everything Oliver had done and what the atmosphere at the company had been like. Unbelievable that kind of person exists. To treat Ryan like that, unforgivable. My family was furious when they heard what had happened. They sprang into action right away. A formal letter was sent to my former company, signed by both the president, who is my father, and the executive director, who is my brother. We had more than enough evidence. Following my brother's advice, I had recorded all of Oliver's verbal abuse. This is terrible, but with this much evidence, it's more than enough. When we played the recordings and consulted with the company's legal counsel, he said we had grounds to file a defamation lawsuit. After discussing the situation with the lawyer, we proceeded to prepare a certified letter notifying the company of the termination of their contract and send it promptly. Let's see what kind of face Oliver makes when he gets this. Soon after the letter arrived, the president of my former company, Mr. Stewart, and Oliver came to apologize in person. We are truly sorry for everything. Mr. Stewart bowed deeply in a sincere apology. Meanwhile, Oliver kept darting his eyes between the president and me, as if he still didn't fully understand what was happening. Though when he looked at me, it was more of a glare than anything else. Ignoring Oliver, our lawyer began to calmly explain the situation. It's all a setup. He planned this. Oliver suddenly shouted in anger. My father and brother scowled at his outburst. Useless middle school graduate, always scheming, he growled, glaring at me. Beside me, my brother frowned in confusion. Middle school graduate? Ryan, what are you talking about? Ryan may have only completed middle school in Japan, but after that, he went to high school in the US and he graduated from the University of California, Berkeley. That's not an education you have any right to mock, my brother corrected him coolly. Oliver stood frozen in shock at the revelation. I didn't know that, Oliver muttered after a brief pause, in a daze. I find it distasteful to flaunt academic credentials, I responded calmly to his muttering. Oliver seemed to realize those words were directed at him, and his face turned red. It wasn't out of embarrassment, but clearly out of anger. How typical. A spoiled little rich boy like him talks big, but can't take instruction. No wonder you never listened to me. Now absolutely livid, Oliver began mocking me again. Instruction? This is what you call instruction? I played back the recording of his abusive words. The vile language that poured out of the speaker filled the room, and both my father and brother glared at Oliver with unmistakable fury. Their glares were cold enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Don't you think this goes a bit far to be considered instruction? My father asked in a chilling voice. Mr. Stewart, clearly hearing the extent of Oliver's abuse for the first time, looked at him as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. With all eyes fixed on him, Oliver's face turned pale as a sheet. He clearly hadn't expected that his outbursts had been recorded. Enough excuses. Apologize. I am deeply sorry, Mr. Stewart said as he grabbed the back of Oliver's head and forced him to bow. Oliver didn't resist and kept his head down. Another employee has suffered this kind of abuse too. Please investigate thoroughly and make sure no one else has to go through what I did. I made that clear to Mr. Stewart. By another employee, of course, I meant Michelle. If you promise to take appropriate action, we're willing to keep the contract as is. But if I hear that even one employee is subjected to unfair treatment again, we will immediately terminate our agreement. My father made that point firmly to Mr. Stewart. Compliance is the top priority in business. Partnering with a company known for a toxic work environment damages our image as well. Let's both work to maintain a healthy and beneficial business relationship. My father's voice was cold. He was still clearly angry, and his eyes remained fixed on Oliver, who was still bowed in silence. We'll conduct a full investigation. I give you my word. Mr. Stewart accepted my father's words and gave a firm, clear response. Realizing how badly the situation had turned against him, Oliver finally lifted his head, only to collapse to the floor in shock. Well then, we'll be taking our leave. Mr. Stewart pulled Oliver to his feet and practically dragged him out of the room. That's the end of Oliver. Though honestly, I have no intention of letting him off the hook that easily after what he did to Ryan. Go easy on him. Will you, David? My brother gave a terrifyingly calm smile, and in my heart, I offered a silent prayer for Oliver. Are you really going to stay and work with us? Yeah, that's the plan. Honestly, even without Oliver, I don't feel like going back to that company. And so, I officially chose not to return to my previous workplace and decided to continue working for my father's company. I had always planned to join the family business eventually. This just happened a little sooner than expected. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your time with us. Working at the travel agency had been fun, but the resort hotel business brought guests from all over the world. Being able to interact with people from so many places and help them enjoy their travels was incredibly rewarding. How's the new job going? Oh, hey, Emily. It's actually really fun. I'm glad. You always said working at the travel agency was your calling, so I was a bit worried. Thanks. But honestly, seeing how happy people are when we welcome them and hearing them talk about what they enjoyed, it brings back those childhood memories. I find myself planning imaginary trips in my head all over again. Really? You'll have to tell me about them next time. Definitely. Just like that, I found myself enjoying my new workplace. Sometime later, I received a handwritten letter from Michelle, my former coworker. She wrote that thanks to my case, the company's upper management had launched a full-scale investigation. Many anonymous complaints had come in, condemning Oliver's behavior, and his misconduct was finally exposed. He was demoted, stripped of all client-facing duties, and reassigned to a meaningless position. The company held a large-scale compliance seminar and committed to preventing similar incidents in the future. Even the coworkers who once stayed silent came forward and apologized. And now, the work environment had improved significantly. Along with these updates, Michelle wrote honestly that she missed having me around. Michelle really is straightforward. Honestly, I miss her too. She had written that I was the only one who stood up for her, but I felt the opposite was true. She was the only one who stood up for me. Ryan, you did nothing wrong. I simply did what I believed was right. Her strong will and sincere eyes left a lasting impression on me. As I thought back on it all, I began to realize how much I wanted to see her. We had been coworkers, but never interacted privately, so I didn't even have her contact information. All I had was the company's contact. Then I thought, I should just go see her in person. That thought pushed me to action. After work, I headed straight to my old company. When I arrived, Michelle happened to be just stepping outside. That couple, it's them. She was seeing off the same elderly couple from before. The man who had stormed out in anger that day now wore a warm smile, holding a travel brochure in his hands. We're really looking forward to the trip. Yes, I'm glad we trusted her, especially since that unpleasant man is no longer here. Overhearing their conversation as I passed by brought a smile to my face. Michelle kept bowing until the elderly couple was completely out of sight. Michelle, Ryan. When I called out to her, she looked up in surprise, eyes wide. It's been a while. But then her expression quickly softened into a smile. Drawn to that smile, I knew right then that the first thing I wanted to do was exchange contact information with her. We did, and after a few messages back and forth, we decided to have dinner together. Honestly, I still can't bring myself to forgive the coworkers who didn't help us. Michelle shared her honest feelings with me during our dinner together. But now, more than that, I just want to prove myself and rise through the ranks, to show them what I'm really capable of. Haha, is that so? I think that's a great attitude. Thanks. And you know, I realize that I really do love this job. I'm not going to quit, no matter what. She's truly strong. Seeing Michelle face forward so confidently filled me with admiration. So, Ryan, what are you doing now? I'm working at the hotel my family owns. Wait, your family's hotel. It was the first time I'd shared everything about myself with Michelle. She was surprised at first, but soon accepted it with a warm smile. I see. That's amazing. Actually, this feels like fate. Fate. The hotel your family runs. That's the one that inspired me to join the travel industry in the first place. Michelle told me she had stayed at our hotel when she was little. She went with her parents, had a wonderful time sightseeing, and was treated with warm hospitality. It left a lasting impression. That experience made her think, I want others to enjoy themselves like this too. I want to be able to recommend something this special. Eventually, she decided she wanted people to enjoy trips she had planned herself, and that led her to join the travel agency. Wow, I used to do something similar as a kid too. Hearing her story reminded me of the imaginary trips I used to plan as a kid, so I shared that with her. It turned out Michelle used to do the same, and we quickly bonded over our shared hobby. Hey Michelle. Yes. I've liked you since we were working together. If it's okay with you, Would you go out with me? Her cheeks flushed bright red at my confession, and even that expression of hers felt so precious to me. I've liked you too, ever since you stood up for me and left the company. I've had feelings for you. So yes, I'd love to. And just like that, we started dating. We spent our days off visiting each other's favorite places, building countless memories together. When I told my family that I had someone special in my life, they immediately asked to meet her. So I introduced Michelle to them. So you're Michelle? I've heard a lot about you from Ryan. He's David, my older brother. You're the one who took action and helped Ryan, right? Thanks to you, I was able to get through it all. I truly appreciate it. David took an immediate liking to her and started treating her like part of the family. My sister Emily also got along well with her. Apparently, they shared a similar fashion sense, and I often found them chatting happily together. I was really glad Michelle and my family got along so well. Meanwhile, things had taken a dark turn for Oliver. The stress of being demoted to a dead-end role was something he began taking out on his family until his wife filed for divorce. They had a young child in elementary school, but she got full custody. On top of that, he apparently had an affair as a way to cope with stress, which led to hefty alimony and child support payments to his ex-wife. Eventually, he fell into debt. Worse yet, he borrowed money from dangerous sources. The collectors even started showing up at his workplace, and in the end, Oliver was fired after being taken away by men in black suits. No one has seen Oliver since. Serves him right. With all that education, the least he could have done was work properly, my brother muttered. I didn't say anything, but I'll admit, his calm tone was kind of terrifying. Meanwhile, Michelle's hard work had been recognized, and she steadily rose through the ranks. Now she's a department manager. I've also taken on more responsibilities myself. And while we're both busy, every day feels meaningful and fulfilling. Michelle, I wanted to talk to you about something. Oh, what is it? I've been thinking of organizing a family trip as a way to thank them for everything they've done for me. My family has helped me and supported me in countless ways. Planning this trip was my way of giving something back. That's a wonderful idea. Actually, let me help you with the planning. I was hoping you'd say that. I'd love to come up with a plan together. Of course, let's make it a trip they'll never forget. The trip we planned ended up being a huge hit with my family. My brother and sister showered us with compliments, and both of us got a little embarrassed. It's one of those fun memories we still talk about. You really do have a wonderful family. I know, right? I'm proud of them. Since then, I've been traveling between the different hotels my father owns, learning more about how they're run. It's a whole different world from what I've done before, but I'm learning a lot, and it's been an incredible experience. Apparently, my brother is set to take over the business someday. Even so, I'm studying hard now, with the hope of becoming someone he can rely on. I'd be really happy if you became my right-hand man one day, Ryan. I'll do my best to make that happen. He's the kind of brother who actually watches my work and evaluates me fairly. That's why I want to live up to his expectations and give it my all. My sister, on the other hand, is getting married and currently planning her wedding. It's an arranged marriage our parents helped set up, but the two are clearly thoughtful and caring with each other. It's obvious they're a great match. Your sister asked me to plan her honeymoon. Just watch. I'm going to create the perfect itinerary. Michelle was thrilled to help and threw herself into it with full energy. Our parents are still as close as ever. Once David takes over, we're planning to go on a round-the-world trip together. Remember those travel plans you used to dream up, Ryan? We're going to use them for inspiration. Hearing them say that made me a little shy, but at the same time, I was touched that they still remembered something I dreamed about so long ago. I realized just how lucky I am to have the family I do. Having a close-knit family is truly a blessing. My parents and siblings always cared for me deeply. Even though we were well off, they never spoiled me. They praised me when it was deserved and scolded me when it was needed. They listened to me, remembered the things I said, even years later. And now, I want to be the one to support them in return. What should I do? Is something troubling you? Well, actually, I want to become someone who can reach out and help when someone's in need, just like my family helped me. And just like Michelle did, even when she was the only one who stood up for me. Ryan, what do you think of this plan? I think my sister and her husband will love it. Great. I can't wait for their wedding. Me too. Let's take notes. We'll use it as inspiration for our own wedding. Michelle and I are still together, and now she's my fiancée. I truly want to build a happy home with her. A few years later, we got married, and a precious new life was born into our world. Just like how I was raised, our hope is to create a warm and loving home, one that's firm but never overly indulgent. By that time, I had taken on the role of executive vice president, working closely alongside my brother, who had become company president. Never forgetting the promise I made to myself, I continue to give my all to my work every single day. For recent high school grads like you, there are no seats available at this event. You have no place here as a loser. Leave my face alone, please. With a big, happy smile, the director reprimanded me. I wanted to say a lot, but I couldn't disagree with the department director, who was my supervisor. I had no choice but to obey his commands. Matt is my name. My age is 27. Not long after I was born, my mother died. After that, my father and I shared a home until he passed away in a terrible workplace accident. My paternal grandparents took me in when I was a young child in elementary school. However, both of my grandparents lost their lives in an automobile pileup catastrophe. At the time, I was a high school student. No one wanted to take me in, and all of my family were whispering behind my back that Matt brings bad luck. I lived alone in my grandparents' home for a while. I wanted to provide a comfortable life for my grandparents, who reared me. I so worked hard in my studies in order to eventually work for a reputable corporation. My grandparents, however, are no longer with me. It seemed useless to study. I felt helpless after losing all of my cherished family members, so I left university. I had to make a livelihood, though. As a result, I started working as a site worker for the nearby building company. I went home to sleep to forget my sorrow, after working mindlessly until I was worn out. I simply continued to relive these meaningless days. Then something occurred one day. "Will you live with me?" That was said by my mother's side uncle, who unexpectedly turned up at my grandparents' house. After my mother passed away, I lost contact with her side of the family, and I had only met my uncle when I was a young child. When he abruptly gave me a place to live, I was initially perplexed, but it appeared that he was worried about me. "You're a kid still," Uncle responded. "You must be in an adult's custody." In addition, as a single man, I had been living alone. I'd like to live with Matt because I've always felt lonely living alone. He gave me a cheeky wink as he said that. I chose to move in with him after seeing him like that and feeling happy for the first time in a long time. My uncle took good care of me. He provided me with everything I needed: clothing, food, and housing, and also gave me advice about work. The company I was working at paid low wages and had a high risk of injury, so he was worried about me and introduced me to a new job. "Your father died in an accident at work. As a father figure to you, I'm worried about you." The company my uncle introduced me to was a major corporation, where normally someone with just a high school diploma wouldn't be able to get a job. I was assigned to a sales department that was short-staffed and incredibly busy, almost desperate for extra hands. At first, the reaction from others was iffy. Why would a high school graduate join this company? I'll do my best not to cause any trouble. I had learned business manners from my uncle before joining the company and had done all the studying I could. I worked hard, taking full advantage of my knowledge and skills. Plus, the physical and mental strength I gained from my construction job also helped me as a salesperson. Gradually, I started to achieve results. And after a year, I had become a fully familiar member of the sales department. Once I became a member of the team, our company had a great atmosphere and was a comfortable place to work. I hoped to keep working here until retirement. Feeling quite comfortable, I'd been thinking about continuing to work at this company for a long time to come. But then, one day, an unexpected event occurred. It was early autumn, shortly after I turned 27. Our company's president was promoted to chairman, and the vice president was decided to be the new president. The aim seemed to be to bring a fresh perspective into the company and strive for further corporate development. In line with this, there were changes in personnel within the company. The manager of the sales department I belonged to was transferred to a branch office. My elderly mother lives alone in my hometown. I had requested a transfer to the local branch there for a while now, and it's been approved. I'm living and working with my mother from now on. I see. It's sad, but please do your best there too. The manager was a good man that treated even me, who was a high school graduate, without discrimination. His transfer was a bit of a shock to me, but I couldn't just keep feeling down about it. The new manager for our sales department was appointed from the branch office's sales department. It seemed that the candidates for the next manager, including the assistant manager and the section chief, were currently handling a significant project and had expressed a desire to defer any promotion. I'm looking forward to working with you all. The new director, Johnson, greeted us with a big smile. At first, I thought he would be friendly and approachable. But then, "Hey you, what's your highest level of education?" I graduated from a university." You have a fairly decent educational background." At our first meeting, Director Johnson unhesitatingly asked us about our educational backgrounds. I later learned he judged people by their academic qualifications and either completely ignored those who didn't meet his standards or subjected them to behavior bordering on power harassment. Of course, Director Johnson didn't like people like me who graduated from high school. "You're a high school graduate? I can't believe it. How can someone with such a low-bottom education be in this company and in the head office of the sales department?" I was assigned to a branch office of the sales department. He ignored all my achievements and looked down on me simply for being a high school graduate. Whenever he opened his mouth, it was nothing but insults and foul language. I can count on one hand the number of times he's actually called me by my name. Dumping his work on me and only taking achievements from me is his daily routine. You should be grateful I even use a high school graduate like you. His unbelievable actions and words made it seem like he didn't even regard me as human. Moreover, he started sabotaging my work to drive me out of the company. One day, something happened. I was preparing to visit a client where we were in the final stages of consultation. I was planning to use a projector for my presentation, so I packed a USB with the presentation data into my bag. However, why is the data gone? I realized at the last minute that all the data in the USB was deleted. I managed to retrieve the data, but we started the presentation much later than scheduled. Of course, this left a bad impression on the client. Despite my best efforts, the presentation didn't go well, and I returned to the company disheartened. "What's wrong with you? You look so depressed." "Let me guess, your presentation was a failure?" It's no surprise. Presentations can't be done without data. As Director Johnson said that with a smirk, I realized that he was the culprit. I didn't mind him disliking me, but I never expected him to go this far. I did everything I could to recover the lost time and managed to secure the contract. When I reported that the contract was finalized, Director Johnson had a look on his face that seemed to say he was not pleased. "You are getting cocky for a high school graduate." His sharp gaze made me suspect he would repeat his actions. My premonitions soon came true. I was heading to a party celebrating the new president's inauguration at a luxury hotel. However, I encountered Director Johnson outside the venue. "Why are you here?" "Well, I was also invited to the party." A useless high school graduate was invited? "Wait here." I wasn't allowed to enter the venue, so I had no choice but to wait outside. Soon after, Director Johnson came back holding my seat with both hands. "I don't know what the mistake was, but when I checked, there really was a seat for you. You know, trash like you doesn't belong here." As he said so, he roughly put my seat down in the hallway. "There's no seat for high school graduates like you at this event. A loser like you has no place here. Get the hell out of my face." Director Johnson grinned and said that. I guess he really hates me. I realized once again, it's impossible not to feel anything after being treated like this. But after all, he is still my boss. And I'm just a general employee. I'm not allowed to rebel outright. I understood it. I'm leaving now. With just that retort, I immediately turned on my heel and left the scene. However, just 10 minutes later, I received a call from Director Johnson. I answered the phone with a frown on my face. "Hello. Come back here right now." "Do I need to come back?" "But you told me to go away, right? What is going on?" "Just come back right now. It's an order from your boss." Just then, the call ended abruptly. I headed back to the party venue with a sigh. When I returned to the venue, I saw the new president and his secretary, and there was Director Johnson with a pale face. "I'm back." "Director Johnson, what happened?" When I spoke up, Director Johnson quickly turned toward me and showed a confused expression. Well." I let out a small sigh at Director Johnson's hesitant response. "What's going on?" I turned to the secretary instead of him and asked her. However, instead of the secretary answering, the new president, who was standing next to her, spoke up first. "I heard this fool kicked you out. Is that true, Matt?" "Yes, sir. It's true." The new president smiled bitterly and replied to me. "Please, call me Uncle Bob like you always do. I accidentally revealed your true identity to this big fool earlier." Hearing the whole story, I couldn't help myself but be dumbfounded. After kicking me out, as the start time of the party approached, Director Johnson was waiting outside the venue for the arrival of the new president. It seems he was trying to curry favor by greeting the new president before the other employees. But then, "President, I apologize. There's been a bit of trouble." As the new president appeared before Director Johnson could greet him, the secretary suddenly stepped forward. "Problem? What happened?" "Actually, the chairman's son is missing. We checked, and his seat itself is gone." "Matt isn't here yet?" "What do you mean his seat is gone?" Director Johnson's eyes widened at the words of the new president. "No seat for Matt. Could it be that?" Finding it hard to believe his own speculation, Director Johnson asked the new president, Is this Matt from the sales department we're talking about?" The president glanced at his secretary and replied to Director Johnson as if he had no choice. "Yes, Matt from the sales department is the chairman's son. The chairman and I have been close personally for years, and I've known his son Matt for a long time. Indeed, I've had a long relationship with him. My uncle had legally adopted me and taken me in. However, my uncle had no experience in raising children, and at first, he struggled with how to care for me. That's when he consulted with Uncle Bob, who was the vice president at the time. We had a good private relationship, and he had a son who was about my age, so he gave my uncle various advice. Uncle Bob was concerned about me, frequently visited my house, and he was amiable and kind. With his help, my uncle and I became closer. I joined my uncle's company, but I didn't want to be treated specially, so I kept my relationship with him a secret. On the day I first called my uncle Dad, he apparently rushed to report it to Uncle Bob right away. I got a call out of the blue from the president, in tears, wondering what was going on. I vividly remember that I apologized to the smiling Uncle Bob, turning bright red with embarrassment, saying, "My father has caused you trouble." It was my request that he attend a party this time. But where was his seat gone? "Oh, by the way, only a few executives know about this, so please keep it under wraps." The moment he heard Uncle Bob's words, Director Johnson's face turned pale blue. Afterwards, Uncle Bob and the secretary confronted Director Johnson. He was acting strangely. They learned he had put my seat in the hallway and sent me away. "So that's what happened. Why didn't you tell me?" Director Johnson, with a mix of anger and confusion, confronted me. I grimaced and kept my distance from him. I asked to keep it a secret when I joined the company because if people knew I was the chairman's son, they would favor me. I wanted to be promoted on my own merits. Plus, if it got out, it would attract trouble. "Some people like you, Director Johnson," I pointed out, leaving him speechless. "But maybe I should have been upfront from the beginning. Then you, Director Johnson, wouldn't have resorted to borderline bullying behavior towards me." "Did I bully you?" Hearing my words, Uncle Bob's face contorted. Deciding it was time to come clean, I revealed all the instances of bullying I had suffered from Director Johnson. As I shared my story, Uncle Bob's expression began to mix with anger. The secretary standing next to him also grimaced significantly. "I can't believe we have someone of such low caliber in our company. Before judging others by their education, you should reflect on your own character." Faced with the secretary's relentless words, Director Johnson hung his head. "Indeed, I heard you were promoted from the branch office due to your achievements. But from Matt's story, it seems those were not your own." "No, it's not like that. I mean," Director Johnson's gaze wandered around, with cold sweat dripping down his face. And when his gaze turned to me, he tried to cling on to me with a goofy smile on his face. "I was good to you, right? I gave you work and was tough at times, but it was all to help you grow." Disgusted by his inconsistency, I said, "You didn't delegate work to me. You dumped it on me. And then, calling me a high school graduate bottom-of-the-barrel incompetent, you've constantly ridiculed me. How can anyone grow with such horrible verbal abuse? Where in the world can you find someone who could? I've never felt you were good to me. Wait, please. My dream is to be promoted to an executive position. I don't care about that." Then I pulled something out of my pocket. "What's that?" "This is a voice recorder. I've been recording your harassment at work. I was preparing to bring this to HR, but it seems that won't be necessary now." When I glanced at Uncle Bob, he nodded firmly at me. "Let's take this matter to HR immediately. It seems our reform has some inappropriate decisions." While Uncle Bob said so, he glared at Director Johnson with cold eyes. That must have been the final straw. Director Johnson's face turned from blue to white, and he collapsed weakly to the ground. After that, Uncle Bob immediately contacted HR as he had promised. As a result, Director Johnson not only received a stern warning from Uncle Bob, but also directly from Uncle, who heard the story. He was then demoted and sent back to the branch office because he was not allowed to stay in the same department with me. The story of his demotion due to bullying had spread throughout the branch office, and I heard that he no longer had a place in the company. Having lost his position and everything else, Director Johnson apparently looked utterly exhausted. The new president also emphasized to keep my identity as the chairman's son confidential if I wanted to remain in the company. No one would believe Director Johnson anymore. Meanwhile, I've been working comfortably in the now peaceful sales department. The new director took over after wrapping up a project as the assistant head. Following that, the section chief became the assistant head, and I was promoted to a senior position. I plan to work even harder than before and aim for further promotions.